commentary, analysis, plus almost 20 years of sporting archives. All free and ready when you are, at home or on the go. The new OTB Sports app. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
All right, you are very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Jerry Gilroy and Owen Sheehan with you all the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. As ever, we'd love to hear from you. Whatever sporting crusade you're on this morning, feel free to WhatsApp us. 087 918 180 is the number. You just need to add us as a contact and then send us a message and away you go. And send us whatever you want. Try and keep it clean. Obviously, we have a filter, so none of your rubbish is going to get through. But tell us the stories of your own WhatsApp groups if you want. Whatever it is, just that you need to get off your chest, feel free to get involved. You can also use the hashtag OTBAM, or of course, we do wade through the cesspit that is our YouTube comments. And thanks very much to all of you kind people in the YouTube comments for all the lovely things that you say about me and Owen and all of our guests. We really appreciate the fact that, you know, you're lonely in your room with nothing to do except abuse people you've never met. So thanks for that. Anyway, notwithstanding, those of you who leave nice comments and constructive comments, we love you. So thanks very much for being part of the show, and we'll reflect that a little bit later on. I'm wearing my Antrim top today. That means it's time for us to do the Antrim Mount Rushmore, which in retrospect maybe we should have done a Belfast / separate one and County Antrim one. There's going to be a little bit of controversy. There's going to be a lot of controversy in the aftermath of this for the people who didn't make it on, and indeed for perhaps some of the sports that get squeezed out in the end. More of that coming your way a little bit later on. In the meantime, I want to talk to you about what's coming up right now. Feature interview with actor Anson Boon. That's coming your way at around about 9 o'clock this morning. And the beef is real. It's a slot that we've been pretending to do for a long time, but actually we're going to do it properly this morning, inspired by Clive Tilsley, who obviously inspired Richard Keys to take to the internet and inflate a beef that we never knew even existed. So the beef is real, coming your way a little bit later on. But right now, we're bringing you a selection of our best stuff from last night's OTB. We're going to be hearing from Dan McDonnell about the burning issue of the day, which was James McClean yesterday. Lizzie Lee in just a few moments' time talking about competing against drug cheats. First though, here's Pat Nevin from the Football Show chatting about financial fair play. Have a look.
The reason there was suddenly all this extra pressure, of course, on United and Leicester and Chelsea is the CAS ruling. Jose Mourinho called the decision a disaster. Jurgen Klopp called it a bad day for football. Pep Guardiola, surprisingly, Pat, thought it was a great decision. He is of the opinion that today a weight's been lifted off the club. He says it shows all that people said about the club wasn't true. Now, I'm not necessarily sure that is the case. In short, if people haven't seen the news, and I suspect they have, the main reasoning behind the CAS decision to expunge the UEFA finding is really a statute of limitation situation, i.e. this was all more than 5 years ago. UEFA had found, for instance, that the club had breached rules in 2014. CAS said most of these breaches alleged by UEFA were either one, not established, or two, time barred. And City from the start actually had said it's too late to do anything about this. You know, there's a 5-year cap here, you've exceeded that. Do you go along with the sense yesterday that this is financial fair play almost dead in the water, or your general take on the decision?
And it's not dead in the water because the rules haven't been changed. So it will still happen. So it's a warning again. But what effect did it have in PSG? What effect did it have in Manchester City? Very, very limited effects. But it will just make the point is they're being looked at, you're being checked. And if you don't do it cleverly or within the rules, you'll get caught. I mean, what Manchester City were doing, honestly, see when this first came in, I couldn't believe how easy it sounded to get round it.
Yeah.
I remember saying it at the time. If I was running a club, I would just say, oh, I've got a sponsorship deal and get the company. If I had the money that they had coming in from where they had it coming in, I'd just say it's a sponsorship deal. You just put it through 2 or 3 companies. It's really, really simple. And then proving that that is not the case is incredibly hard to do. You know, that we might say our stadium rights are valued at this. Who's to say it's not? the going rate might be 10% of this. Yeah, but we're a big club. Honestly, it's a minefield to trying to get into that. But the fact that they're saying, right, we're looking at this, we're checking this, we're going to push it as far as possible. It might not be a great day for it, but it actually might not be the worst day either, because it said, right, well, we think you're kind of guilty. We can't get you on it, but we're waiting for the next group. And the next group that try that, we'll be on your tail. And, you know, it's easy to say it's the end of it. I don't think financial fair play is the end of it at all. Somewhat surprisingly, I'm not sure it's a good idea anyway, financial fair play. The reason why it was brought in, and the reason why all these ideas are brought in, transfer windows, you name it, was to make sure that clubs didn't overspend and found themselves in a position where they go out of business because the sugar daddy disappeared.
Yeah.
Well, A, that doesn't look like it's likely for those people that that's going to happen. And B, the thing I always wanted was, put as much money as you like into the game. No, I don't care. Just put it all in. But just say what you're doing. Don't do it as loans. Don't do it any other way. The money will then filter through. Manchester City get hundreds and hundreds of millions. That's great. But where did they then spend it? That money will go back into bits of the game. It will go back into, be it developing their own kids or buying players from other countries that need the money. It's money coming from outside the game into the game that then filters. Of course, I'm ignoring the agent situation.
Well, yeah.
But let's ignore that part of it because there's nothing you can seem to do about that. So my difficulty is now, if you say, but that's not fair play, I get that. That's okay. If you want to go to the American gridiron system, in a gridiron game where they have a draft, yeah, go to that. Good luck. I don't think you're going to get it to work in football. I don't think there's any chance you'll get it to work. But I'd happily go to that system, but I don't think there's any desire to go to that system.
Yes. Well, it's a very interesting point. Gary Neville was making a similar argument yesterday. He was saying the Jack Walker-esque story would be prohibited by financial fair play. He said, you know, 120 odd years ago, wealthy woolen mill owners were putting huge sums of money into Manchester United. This has always happened in the game. There have always been wealthy owners. If they can balance the books, if they can cover the cost and not see the club go bankrupt, well, what is the issue? You know, either we're going all out to have salary caps and, as you said, an American system, or we're not. And this is somewhere in between. The line I see used about FFP is it makes it a fairer competition or protects the competition for all. I mean, that doesn't really seem. I don't think PSG are going to be challenged anytime soon in France somehow.
And that's the point. You know, they want it to be. They call it financial doping, right? Financial doping, as you say, has always been there. It's been the bigger clubs. You get that much bigger, you will then argue for, you know, bigger rights deals. You will argue for more of the television monies if you get higher up. You will argue for. You used to share the gates. That's what you don't do that anymore. So you get the bigger stadiums. So you keep. All these things have all went one direction, and that's the way football has always been. If you want to go into that, you know, wonderful utopian world, which, you know, I'm a bit of a lefty, I would quite like that.
I was just going to say, I would have thought that'd be right up your street.
Yeah, I would love it. It'd be absolutely up my street. Do I think it's going to happen? No. So I'm living in the real world with it. I know what I'd like to happen, but I live in, you know, the world of reality. And the world of reality is, right, you're not going to get that completely and utterly right. So manipulate it the best for the game that you possibly can. So if Man City or Liverpool or whoever or Manchester United are getting these monies in, they're good. But make sure that A, it's not done by debt, not done by loans. That's the disaster area you go down to, because that's when the clubs go out of business. Do it by finance being brought into the club and then let it filter out. It'll stay to a large extent within the game and it'll help the game build. And if you're a team lower down the league and you're feeling a bit fed up with the fact that all this money's going elsewhere, well, what if Man City buy your player for £40 million? Well, that's kind of helped you a little bit. I know this argument really well because it was big in Scotland for a long time. People always slaughtered in the old days Celtic and Rangers because they controlled absolutely everything. And I used to say, well, yeah, but they are bringing all the money in. And they're nicking our players, but they're giving us enough money so that we can, you know, redirect that into developing players. It kind of is the way that system works, and it's worked fairly well for a long time. It leads to a very small number of clubs, you know, winning every time. But see if you don't get this possibility of throwing a lot of money in from outside, the same clubs will win it forever and ever and ever more, because the ones at the top have got the most money and they will stick there. And you'll tend to find the ones with the most money tend to win things overall.
Well, I have to say I'm shocked. I never thought I would be saying the golden triangle of trickle-down economics is Thatcher, Reagan and Pat Nevin. But here we are. That's where we finally got there.
It's a realism. If someone explained to me a way it won't happen.
Yeah, sure.
Because I've seen enough people asking, and there's many things in this life that I want to be. I would like the world to be, and trying to get football to work in that way. I do actually mention the American game, American football a lot because I like that method. I happen to think if we could organise that, and it's not, the thing is you can't organise in the UK because you've got Italy and you've got Spain and you've got, it's not going to work because players will just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. It'd have to be Europe-wide. Now at the moment, the UK is not really kind of joining in with European stuff at the moment. So if anything,
I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, this is a tricky topic to sort of to navigate, really. And I always admire James McClean, I have to say, for sort of not sort of running away from a discussion point, that he will say something, but if pressed on it, he will follow up and explain his point of view on it. I mean, it's a tricky one. I mean, I posted up a story about this yesterday, just about James McClean's comments, his Facebook post, and I guess specifically the point that he, which I thought was interesting. He'd alluded to it before, but probably not as bluntly as such, that his point about maybe other Irish players and maybe not being as supportive at times. I mean, I posted that up, and now I'm sort of it's hard to actually refresh social media because there's hundreds and hundreds of comments now. There's a debate and a row going on beneath it about a lot of the disagreements that we have when James McClean enters the public arena. And
in so much as you can, are people generally supportive of McClean's comments and his calling out of his teammates, or are they not so impressed?
Both. I think it's probably more so supportive, but that could be social media can be an echo chamber that might be reflective of you're posting it from an Irish medium, and you're getting a lot of it from that side. But I guess it's gone down the road now of people who's debating, whose opinions are not going to be changed at this point by anything. So that was it. I think he's perfectly entitled to raise his voice and air his view. It's a tricky one to mention, as I said, in the context of what is like the global movement that is I suppose there's a difference almost now between the Black Lives Matter campaign and then the organisation itself. Sure. And I know that in itself has provoked, that in itself can be a tricky discussion for people to navigate when you're almost trying to use the right words actually about it, because that's obviously there's layers to that now. But the general area of, I guess, there is the racist comments, the abuse directed to McGoldrick and Wilfred Zaha, and certainly there is no doubt that some people don't consider the comments aimed at James McClean to be as serious. There's no doubt that view unquestionably exists.
Oh, 100%. 100% that is the view. And his point there, I listened to the full kind of 8, 9, 10 minutes of this in post the news round, because this came up and I was like, I must listen to his full interview. And he came across pretty well, and absolutely that is his view, that discrimination is discrimination, but he used the phrase there that racism has a higher precedence over sectarianism and he just wants equality. That is his viewpoint. He's absolutely right when he says it's treated more seriously. There is no doubt. Yeah. If a player had been on the end of racist abuse the way McClean has been on the end of sectarian abuse for 9 years, it would not have been tolerated the way it has been. I don't think that's even up for debate.
No, that's 100% the case. And again, it's a tricky one to get into it, because you have to be careful of the phrasing around it. But certainly there's no doubt that a lot of the stuff aimed at McClean, while sometimes it's simplistic to say that it's his stance on the poppy that generated. There's no doubt that has fueled it. But in response to his stance on the poppy, it generates comments from people who probably it exposes latent views that they have that refer to. There's almost a sense that they are fine with the Irish once they are quiet about their Irishness or don't express particular views, which, as James McClean has outlined in the past, are very personal to him. And having been to Craig, and I have to say, I find them very understandable. I think at times, and I think he has said this in his interview today, I don't think at times he hasn't helped himself, and there's no doubt that the recent the Balaclava post on Instagram, it was just an attempt at humour. It just was bad. It was a bad judgment. A simple bad judgment. I don't think he can defend that. But at the same time, when you go down the route of saying that someone is bringing it on themselves, I'm not sure about that, because again, you're in the route of comparisons, but it's a sort of like saying, well, is someone bringing it on themselves if they, like we've had this in Italy with players who was the player in Italy who was told not to respond to taunts, or if you score a goal and go to people during, are you bringing it on yourself, or are you just being defiant? And if someone in the crowd is moved to shout that at you or direct those comments at you, then really, that is an individual act relative to them being wound up by your actions, if you know what I mean. So it's and even going into it, we're sort of tiptoeing around there because it's sort of hard to actually you feel uncomfortable about comparisons because you don't want to be seen to be cheapening or demeaning either. No, you don't want to create a hierarchy. Either version of it, exactly. And I think and ultimately I think with James McClean's situation is there is an element of just having to walk a mile in his shoes. How would you not feel strongly if you're getting stuff in the post, if you're getting stuff about your kids, if you're getting bullets sent, if you're getting people coming to your house, talking about threats and whatnot? And certainly I know that while he probably would be strong-minded about taking it, I guess he still has family who would view it maybe in different terms, and I find this very, very hard to take, I think. So, he is 100% entitled to raise his view, and it is a fascinating point he makes. It has crossed my mind on several occasions, and I think John Walters spoke about this recently, actually, after he retired. I think John Walters had a post where he did maybe put a post out supporting James McClean, and it was sort of unusual that you maybe haven't seen too many Irish players publicly do that. And I think, there's no doubt that we probably suspect, and James McClean said it before, that they want an easy life, that to do so exposes yourself to a lot of abuse. But what if they feel the same as he does about certain issues but don't say it? Who do you sympathise with in that position?
Both. So, you mentioned Rio, and this is the pinnacle for you, and it's something of a miracle as well. And you've outlined this kind of amazing, miraculous story to get there, and it's everything kind of good about sport. And then at the other end of the spectrum, if you think of Rio and you think of the winner of that race, Jemima Sumgong, she won gold, and in second place was Eunice Kirwa, who transferred from Kenya to Bahrain at the age of 29. These things just happen now increasingly. And she finished second. So first and second in that marathon that you took part in Rio, subsequently tested positive for EPO and were banned. And so you think you're standing on that start line with them and you finish in the top 60, and let's be honest, they are far from the only ones in that race who were doing something. You must, I don't want to put words in your mouth. How does that make you feel? Is that something you think of very often?
Okay, my stretch goal for Rio, standing on the start line, was the top 50. Stretch goal. Tony said break 240. And that was, I had everything figured out for the pacing, and it was so hot. It was like 33 degrees. Horrible at the end. So broke the 240, and I came 56th. And I remember my dad saying to me at lunch the next day, he said, you came in the top 50. And I said, I know, yeah. He said, you definitely did. Looking at those girls, definitely. There's no way that at least 6 of them aren't on something. And sure enough, 2 of them have tested. That's the ones we know about. But I think you just have to believe in the ones that you're certain of. And we all have our favourites, like Des Linden for me. I think she was 6th in Rio. I met her the next day. She's American. They call her the metronome. I love her. She's amazing. I believe in Des. So Des for me is the one who I'm going to look to, who I'm going to follow, who I know, is fabulous. Florence Kiplagat's another one I just love.
And why do you believe in those people, Lizzie?
Because they're around forever. Right, they're around for enough. If someone's running marathons for 15 years, and they'll run everything all the time, then you just believe in them, and they'll show everything. They show all their training. They don't do anything ridiculous. They don't, they chip away at their times, and they just get that little bit better all the time. They don't come out and break the world record, and no one's ever heard of them, because that's happened. That happened in the half marathon last year, and I can't even remember the name. That's not believable. It's when they're around for a long time that you kind of go, yeah, I believe in that person. They're knocking around forever. But you can get cynical, right? You could. We have to look to ourselves and say, right, from an Irish perspective, how are we doing? I was tested 3 times in my pregnancy with Jess, out of competition in my house. So, you can, we are tested in Ireland. We can look ourselves in the mirror and say, yes, I know I'm clean, because they're rocking up to my house on a bank holiday weekend to test me out of competition. So I think, you could let it all consume you, or you could just get on with it and do the best you can and be honest. Other than money, I can't see why you'd ever do it, and that sounds so naive and whatever, but crossing the finish line, having taken something, just would be totally empty to me. I don't know why, at my level anyway, it would just make no sense, I think you can certainly see some people, I've chatted to Rob Heffernan about this before, some people, they're paying for their house, they're giving stuff back to a village where there's poverty, not excusing it, but there's more reasons for it. But I just, you can, I think with anything, you just have to park it and just get on with your own stuff and do your own training and do the best you can. I do think things are getting better because they've caught all these guys. We're seeing big names now get busted, and we weren't seeing big names get busted a few years ago. So I think we're seeing the process is a bit more honest now, and I think we're going to see more big names get dropped in the following years. And
Lizzie, to what extent is it an open secret amongst the field? Like when you bump into the 2 or 3 fellow competitors that you admire and have faith in, if you're having a chat, for instance, does everybody in the field know that Jemima and Eunice in 2016 are doping, or is it a surprise?
We weren't surprised I wasn't surprised by Jemima. I shared a taxi with Jemima in New York. I did the women's mini marathon, the 10K in New York, and I shared a taxi back to the airport with her, and she had broken her collarbone or damaged it badly in the London Marathon in April, and she told me then she'd missed training for 6 weeks, and she had destroyed us all in New York. Now, destroying me is one thing, but she destroyed the likes of Kim Smith and Des Linden and these ones, she beat everyone by about 80 seconds. And I remember saying to my husband, she's back training 3 or 4 weeks, and she's after running. She ran 31:41, I think, on a hilly Central Park course. I couldn't believe that. And when you're
in the taxi, is that something you're going to say to her?
No, we didn't talk at all.
Okay.
I've been in situations with athletes who I would think are not clean, and I've gone to a different table for breakfast, and that happens. That happens in hotels. People just don't mix with the people that they think are dodgy. It's not something people talk too openly about. You'd talk openly about it with your Irish team pals. You wouldn't to another federation, because we know what's going on with us. We know we're all tested. So we know that we're clean, and then you just kind of wouldn't want to have too much gossip or bad blood. And you could end up rooming with these people as well. You go out to a race and you're thrown in with somebody who's, so be a little bit careful and a little bit PC while you're still competing. I think where you see people getting very vocal about it is when they've retired, and it's much easier in that situation, as you can imagine.
Sure, yeah. What have you made of the whole situation? Do you think it was unfair to not let players get involved with inter-county before September 14th? Is that asking a bit much for county managers, or were you happy to see that space created for club and a fairly clear-cut line in the sand? Give us your take on the situation.
Yeah, certainly. I can only probably speak from the Dublin perspective. So certainly with the last, just if you look at the last 3 years, during the April club activity season, club activity block, for those 5, depends when you were knocked out, obviously the National Football League, but for those 5 maybe weeks you didn't have access to players, and that's you don't. I said the players do need a break from the intercounty setup as well because of the attention that it requires from them. So over the last 2 years, we only had 4 weeks to prepare the team coming out of that particular block of championship club games. In 17, we had 3 weeks because of the April setup wasn't there. So the county board got Dublin County Board got 2 rounds of the hurling and football championships in, and with 3 weeks then to prepare. I think it was Carlo back in 17, I think, for that particular game. So like 4 weeks is enough, I suppose, where the confusion probably hose and best intentions. And I think the GA have done a fantastic job in terms of their COVID-19 return to play protocols. I've been very, very impressed with the leadership shown. We're up there with the even professional sport. It's been very impressive. And I see that with my son's club, how they're managing it. It's been really good. But the confusion probably arose, Joe, in terms of the club activity finished on the 11th of October. Then you had a week to go to the opening round of the National Football League, with some teams having, like Donegal and Wexford and Wicklow and Tyrone, have 3 weekends in the spin, which is it's obviously it's doable. We do it in the National Football League, but that preparation time you need has been probably, that's where the confusion arose. So I understand why county managers might want to get access to the players, and I think you'll see though over the coming weeks that players will remain with their clubs until they exit. The challenge obviously is that some counties are exiting earlier. So, for example, Mayo, I know, Tyrone, Dublin have their championships finishing around the 19th, I think. You've other teams like Carlo, that county, are going out to the 11th of October with the county championship. And there's some teams in between. But I think the average is probably the 26th, 27th of September, when most counties will conclude their I'm talking about football now, their football championships. So everybody isn't on the start line at the same time. And I think that was probably the intent. If they go through this again in terms of next year's season, they probably just need to draw a line in terms of give a 2-week window to say this is when we finish our club championships. So one team, if it's starting a week early, that's not too bad. But I think a really important session for some teams will probably be the 10th, 11th of October, that weekend before the commencement of that campaign. So teams will either have 3 games, the 2 in the National League and the Championship game, or they'll have 7 over 10 weeks if they get all the way to the All-Ireland final. So that weekend is going to be very, very important for them. So they're going to have a lot of the work done. But you know what? You push a lot of that back on your fitness and your athletic development coach. He should have the guys in tip-top shape. They don't need to be get together to be running around fields. So I'd expect that most players will come back from their clubs to the counties in pretty good condition. A little bit of top up. And in terms of we're talking about here about the Dublin Neurological Institute. What fascinated with me with Professor Lynch and his team, I was invited to a fundraiser along with Micheál and Ted Walsh a number of years ago, and I heard Professor Lynch talking about the science of neurology and the mind, and that's as somebody who lectures in human performance and aviation, I'm fascinated with how the mind works, and the Dean I provide a fantastic service. So I think that the challenge will be for us and the manager get the players back is to work on that mindset in terms of that high performance mindset as they roll into the championship, and that training which is at intercounty, which is up another little level from senior county from club football, that really is important as well. So you can understand why club managers want to get them. They don't need to get them for the full summer, but certainly a 3 week and a week block is important, because the last week there's very little work done before the campaign starts. There's lots of lessons learned, but I think best intent for the GEA, and I suppose what will be interesting now is whether they shift on that 14th of September line in the sand.
Micheál.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
It was like Raj Cam every time you kicked.
Yeah, it was tough. It was, and again, what you learn from that. Myself and Dave got together after that World Cup, and I said it to him. I said there was a couple of kicks where I'm lining up and behind the posts, like Raj is there, and he said, next time that happens in a game, I said, I want you to have him as your target, and he just put the ball right between his eyes.
Off the Ball, weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1. This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Right, if you have just joined us, you're very welcome along, and you've missed half an hour of goodness, or indeed if you subscribe to our podcast, maybe you didn't realise that we actually have half an hour of goodness that you don't get unless you actually tune in live to the show every morning from 7:30. So, for example, you've just missed Pat Nevin on Financial Fair Play, you've missed Lizzie Lee talking about being in a cab with people you suspect of drugs cheats and competing in the Olympics, where ultimately a couple of people who medal end up losing those medals. Dan McDonald talking about the tricky waters of talking even about what James McClean has been saying, and loads more stuff there, including Jim Gavin talking about the GAA calendar. So all of that is available on our live stream every morning. The best place to get that is on the OTB Sports app, and you can just search for the OTB Sports in the App Store. Tonight on OTB from 8 o'clock, Jim Gavin and Micheál Murray-Hartig are hosting a very special inter-county quiz with a host of special guests: Aidan O'Shea, Paddy Andrews, Cora Staunton, Eamon McGee and Ciarán Donaghy, amongst the very famous names. It's all in aid of the Dublin Neurological Institute at the Mater Hospital. You can head over to the GoFundMe, just search Jim Gavin on that one, gofundme.com/F/Jim Gavin to donate, and you could win a training session with Jim Gavin for your club. A couple of things we need to talk about here this morning, and this is a slightly better picture of my training top, which is Owen, good morning to you. How are you?
Good. What is the training top?
I'm gonna run over to the camera here. Not really supposed to do this in a professional environment. Can you need directions here? Can you read that? Can you read that?
My eyesight's a bit shoddy. I'm sure everybody at home can read it.
It says Antrim. It's my dad's training top from the 70s when he was coaching the minor team, the Antrim minor hurling team, that took part in the Leinster Hurling Championship. Can you believe back in the 70s they were so progressive that they put the Antrim minor hurling team into the Leinster Hurling Championship? Something that they won't do for Galway now, because Galway might get too good. But in the 70s, they did that. They were beaten, I think, in a Leinster semi-final by Wexford. And the Donnellys, who ended up being on the 1989 team, were playing in that team. So that was that generation of hurlers who came through.
This is your Mount Rushmore. Kildare was not your Mount Rushmore. This is your real Mount Rushmore.
I'm a blow-in in Kildare, even though I was like 6 months old when I got there. Technically, you're a blow-in. It's where's your blood buried? That's it. That's the question, isn't it? Where are the bones of your family interred? That's where you're from in Ireland, and you can never escape that. It is absolutely inescapable, isn't it? Isn't that the whole point about? We're not mad on moving towns or parishes or boundaries or counties.
No, we're not. I suppose, like I would always say, that the whole idea of identity is a fairly fluid thing. That if you want to put a Dublin jersey, or Kildare jersey on your kid, despite the fact that you're from Antrim, then so be it if you're living in that county. But at the same time, if you are...
Say you make your home in Dublin for the rest of your life, Owen.
God, it's terrible, terrible, terrible thought.
When you die at 70, 80, 90, 120, as whatever it is, whatever amazing advances in medical science there are, or maybe there's a global pandemic that wipes the whole population out when you're 50, whatever. All of these range of outcomes are now possible. Will you die a Kerry man, or will you actually be a dub?
Well, I certainly won't be a dub anyway.
Why not? You've been living in Dublin for like more than you ever lived anywhere else.
It's true, but that is not what it is. Like, I never really thought about it in the way that you just put it there. Where is your blood buried? I think it's actually more fluid than that again. I think it's more fluid than... I think you've got to actually just ask yourself the question, where am I from? It's a very, very simple question, and only you can answer that question. There are multiple factors for that. Parents and the way you're brought up is a huge part of that. So for you, I'm sure that identity is part Antrim, part Kildare. For me, it's all Kerry.
This training top is cool, by the way. That's the one thing I'll say, that they had good gear in the 70s, and it could double. You know, you could use it for whatever you wanted, I suppose, is the best way of phrasing that. I want to show a couple of photographs to this, right? So boxing, when we were thinking about, I think first off, a significant confession has to be made, and I hope this bit gets tacked on to the podcast later on, so the people who are just listening to the podcast of Mount Rushmore realise that I'm having a big moment here where I'm saying, I'm sorry, this was a screw up. Next week, we're talking about what we're going to do with Dublin, and we're going to try and decide how do you split it all. We should 100% have had a Belfast Mount Rushmore and taken out anybody who's in Belfast from Down and Antrim and just had County Antrim and County Down, because this is unbelievably one of the most rabid sports cities that you could have. If you think about it, you have George Best, you have Alex Higgins, you have countless boxers going back all the way and up to today, Carl Frampton, and that's not even to leave out some of the classic hurlers and footballers they had from the 50s, 60s and 70s. So I don't know about you, Owen, but I actually think that trying to get everybody who comes from Belfast and everybody who comes from the county onto the same Mount Rushmore is a bit of an issue, particularly when you think about the quality of the boxers they've had.
It wasn't an issue when we did Down, because I guess County Down was very, very strong as well. And you had George Best leading the way there, and then you had county people like Rory McIlroy on the mountain as well. So maybe in hindsight that would have been a good idea, but it is far, far too late for this.
I've just realised
Mount Rushmores.
We didn't even talk about Graham McDowell.
That's a good point. We didn't even mention a major winner. A major winner did not get a mention. There was going to be further controversy.
We're going to be sacked, Owen. This is it. We're going to be Clive Tilsley here.
No.
We're going to wake up and there's going to be two different people sitting in these seats. It's going to be Sam Matterface and somebody else, and we'll be doing videos on the internet. They're getting loads of likes and stuff, but we didn't even mention GMAC.
There's only one person in this conversation wearing an Antrim hoodie. If you've let your own county down, then don't blame me.
I want to talk about boxing, right? We've got an amazing photograph here of these are two Olympic bronze medalists, and I'm not even sure these get a mention. So this is John Caldwell and Freddie Gilroy, who I don't think is related. Maybe he is. We could stick up Gilroy Mount Rushmore here from Antrim as well. So this is just after the announcement of a massive fight in the King's Hall where they were both in the top 10 in the world. I think one of them might have had a belt. There's a good book about this. I think it's called Gilroy and Caldwell, Best of Enemies. And they both won medals. So there's a famous piece of commentary when John Tracy wins his medal in '84, where in perfect time, Jimmy McGee lists off every single medal winner just as he crosses the line, and now silver for John Tracy. And he mentions Gilroy and Caldwell in the middle of that. And it's hard to explain, but if you can imagine, say Paddy Burns and Michael Conlon were at similar enough weights for them to be able to fight professionally after, in the kind of year and a half after they've come from an Olympic Games where they've both won medals. Can you imagine the hype that there would be around that in the city that they're both from? Except take it back 50 years and boxing is the most important sport on a global level where everybody understands that this is the be-all and end-all, and the heavyweight championship is the most important thing that's ever happened in the world of sport. That's kind of the level that those two are at. And again, the whole city comes out. So I just want to make sure that we're fully aware of the boxing credentials and how important boxing is. And, we've talked about Jerry Story on the show before and how boxing is one of those sports that isn't divided along sectarian divides. We've seen Carl Frampton fight in the Ireland colours, for example, even though he's from the Unionist community. And again, he's somebody who is completely, he's married to a Catholic and is somebody who appreciates both traditions. And so boxing is very important. And I presume we're going to have somebody boxing on the list.
I don't know, it's your county, Jerry. I sure hope you don't let down your fellow Antrim people by not getting a boxer on that list. It would be like doing a Kerry Mount Rushmore, not having a footballer. It would be like doing a Kilkenny Mount Rushmore and not having a Kilkenny hurler. I would say it would be more egregious than leaving off Cody and Shefflin, not getting a hurler, or not getting a boxer onto this Antrim list. But no pressure on you. It's such an important sport for reasons way beyond sport, as you've mentioned. Like Jerry Story. I was going to make the point that there was a sort of safety to these boxers, that they were kind of beloved by both sides of the community, but that's just not true whatsoever either. I mean, Jerry Story had multiple bombs placed under cars and forklifts that he was driving during his life. They were never safe, but there was love from both sides of the community, which is, I guess, as good as you could possibly get in that era in Belfast when you're a very public-facing person, because everybody would have known you in the community if you're a boxer or if you're involved in the fight game in Belfast. I don't get an appreciation of that. We don't get an appreciation of that down here. And as you say, this is not ancient history. This is still something that is very, very true right now. When you mentioned the Frampton example there, Michael Conlon is going to be another man who could be in contention, and Wayne McCullough as well.
Wayne McCullough.
Three of the contemporaries.
It's hard to explain just how amazing Wayne McCullough's achievements were. Again, they weren't televised in Ireland the way. So Barry McGuigan's was all televised, and it was in our time zone. So when he was winning, apart from obviously when he loses to Steve Cruz, but when he's winning in the 80s, it's in Queen's Park Rangers. It's on BBC, and then RTE carry the feed, or maybe it's on ITV. It's certainly on terrestrial television, so everybody gets to see it. But what Wayne McCullough did was he went to Japan, fought a Japanese boxer, and won a world title in Japan, which was absolutely unheard of at that point. But we didn't get to see it until the following week when Sports Stadium showed it, and you knew the result. So you woke up in the morning and somebody had obviously got a telex or a telegram, or somehow they had found out from Japan. The news was that Wayne McCullough had won. Like, it's a phenomenal achievement, absolutely phenomenal. And he was such a brilliant boxer as well, and such a great character. And look, I think there's absolutely a case for Wayne McCullough. And these are just Belfast boxers that we're talking about. So Paddy Barnes, two bronze medals in the Olympics. Like, that's a sensational achievement for anybody. But again, you mentioned Michael Conlon, and then you've got to go back to those guys. And there's apparently even a better boxer, Rinty Monaghan, who I don't know anything about, who, by all accounts, when it comes to Irish boxing history, is the number one Belfast boxer. I just want to indulgently show one more photograph here. This is the Antrim Camogie team from 1967, I want to say. In the bottom camera left, so I don't know if it's your right-hand corner when you're watching it, is my Auntie Maeve, who was the best player on the team, who was a Texaco Award winner, which was kind of the precursor of the All-Stars. And this is the team that stopped the absolutely dominant Dublin team, who I think won 17 titles in a row, or 17 out of 18. And this is the team that stops them. And my ma is in the top right-hand corner, one in, as I'm looking at it. So I guess you're probably seeing it in the top left-hand corner. Yeah. So this is a special team in our house anyway. Yeah.
Wow, the sporting credentials in your household aren't half bad.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened to me. I mean, it obviously skipped a generation. I'm hoping that somehow those genes have been passed on to my kids, but I didn't get them.
Did you pick up a hurl?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that was our sport as kids.
I've heard through the grapevine that you're a fairly handy golfer in kind of a natural sense, rather than putting in any time to it. So, is that the sort of you were born with the wrists, but that was about it, sort of thing?
Well, I mean, it's difficult when I don't know. I wasn't very good at it. I had no pace. I can hurl. I could certainly navigate my way around the game, but I had no speed or pace or explosiveness or all the things that make good athletes. I was not an athlete, Owen, as we'll see on Friday when it comes to doing the duathlon. A long, slow, steady, repetitive slog. It sounds like it's right up my street, to be honest.
Sounds like you'd be a decent league player.
But anyway, look, I loved hurling. That was the sport that we grew up with, and the hurling team from the 70s, that minor team, a lot of them end up being on the team in '89 that makes it to the All-Ireland final. And here's one last story about this. So there's been a slew of celebrities through this building over the last 18 years since I've been working at News Talk, and there's like 3 people ever I've got photographs with. One was Steve Van Sant obviously he's more famous, I guess, in real life for being part of Bruce Springsteen's band, but actually I love him because I'm a massive Sopranos fan, so got a photograph with him. Got a photograph with President Jed Bartlett from the West Wing when he was in as well. And the only other person that I've ever asked for a photograph is Ciarán Barr. Now, I'm getting this out of the way so I don't fangirl all over him in about an hour's time, because he was the star of that team in '89, and I think there's definitely a case for him to be on the Mount Rushmore, essentially because so he wins an All-Star the previous year and then captains the team in the All-Ireland final the next year, and looked like he could hold his own against the hurlers of all of the other counties at that point. And, this is the troubles are still raging. There's like one of my memories from those games is a no extradition banner being unfurled at the top of it might have been the Hogan stand or the Cusick stand, and a request coming over for the lads to get down who are, you know, but actually the whole I was like, whoa, what is this? You know, political statements being made at GA matches through the medium of unfurled banners. It was a different time, and for the Antrim hurlers to be on the All-Ireland stage and competing year in, year out in the semi-finals, losing in heroic / heartbreaking fashion was, you know, and also those golden jerseys, this splash of saffron. It was a really beautiful thing.
Can I ask you, if you had to pick a team to be on your solo Mount Rushmore of your favourite GAA team, would you go for the 89 Antrim hurlers or the 98 Kildare footballers?
I mean, they both end up losing in slightly heartbreaking fashion. Like Nicky English scoring 2-12, and the second goal is this amazing highlight reel that gets shown again and again and again and again and again, and you're like, it's such a beautiful goal. Why did it have to be against our team? I don't know if you know the one where the ball just bounces and he runs onto it and he volleys it, doesn't take it in his hands at all, and it explodes like a bullet into the goals. It's like that scene in JFK where they keep going back and to the left and they show JFK's head explode. That's kind of what it's like again, back and to the left, back and to the left. So there's that one. And then there's the heartbreak of 98 where you think at halftime you're going to win. I mean, why are you tormenting me with this, Owen? Why are you offering me these two terrible... I love them both. I do love them both. And that's like, that's the duality in all of us, right? There's no one thing that we are. We're multifaceted human beings. Why can't I love these two teams, Owen?
There can only be one. We have to decide. Everything has to be black or white. Everything.
Then I'm going to go with the Antrim 89 team, to be honest. Like I love the 98 team, but I know that Kildare can do better than that. And I know that team like wants the county to progress. But the 89 thing, when are Antrim going to get back to an All-Ireland hurling final? What's the pathway for that to happen? How much investment will that take?
Some. Like, I mean, it is the great untapped potential of modern Gaelic games, Antrim GAA, and I'm not just talking about hurling there. It is the great hope that there will be a new superpower to challenge other superpowers around Gaelic games soon. You've got a lot of people. Maybe starting with a stadium would be a good place.
Well, actually starting with coaches would be more important than the stadium, but the stadium is kind of the symbol of the cancer at the middle of the whole thing. So you're right. Look, and I think we should come back to that story because it is definitely interesting. Maybe a couple of million a year, maybe the level of investment that Dublin have had, and in 20 years' time you could see Antrim hurling getting back to where it needs to be. Anyway, look, I'm interested in the Antrim Sporting Mount Rushmore. I hope you all are as well as a result of our chat here. Shane Hannon is with us. Shane, how are you?
I'm all right, lads. Listen, look, you say you're interested in it, Ger, but to leave GMAC off this list, I mean, not even leave him off the list, but, you know, to not mention him. You've got so many to choose from. You've got Terence McNaughton. You've got AP. You've got Mary Peters. A lot to choose from there, but I was ready to celebrate. You know, I was going to pop in a DVD, probably Social Network, Gladiator, something along those lines. Was going to have a few cold beers tonight to celebrate, but maybe go for a few rounds with my lucky Red Seas. But to be honest with you, I'm a bit disgusted here, you know. To not even be discussed is pretty disappointing. US Open 2010. What more can be said?
I mean, in fairness, you know, like the OG of the... Yeah, I'm sorry. It was a complete oversight. I don't know what to say to you, GMAC. I haven't a clue. I apologise.
It's a disgrace. The other disgrace as well, lads, on a serious note, is Alex Higgins. He has to be there. I mean, whoever is on this Antrim Mount Rushmore this morning, Alex Higgins is the first name on, without a shadow of a doubt.
Go on.
Two-time world champion, 1972, 1982. Transcended the sport. There's a great documentary. I think it's still on Netflix called Mavericks, but it's a series. But goes through like Alex Higgins, Jimmy White, Ronnie O'Sullivan, how they changed the game of snooker in their own little ways. But Higgins is just those images of him calling for his child crying in 1972 after winning the world title at the Crucible are just iconic. I mean, obviously he had his troubles, but you ask anyone involved in snooker these days. I mean, I even spoke to Ken Doherty, and Ken writes in his book about Alex playing at the Goffs in Kildare for the Irish Masters years ago, and he was an usher. Ken was an usher, and you know, Alex would have a whisper with the ushers before the play and say, "Look, if I ask for an orange juice, I mean a vodka orange juice. If I ask for a vodka orange juice, I mean a double. He's a character. I mean, he clearly changed the game. I've read his book, and look, he has some serious.
Through the Looking Glass, that one. You say he's had his troubles, right? That's blah, blah, blahing away some fairly horrific and significant issues. He was violent. I have a strong sense that anybody who is violent should not be on any Mount Rushmore. And, I think that conversation needs to be had about George Best. That conversation needs to be had about Alex Higgins. I think that, that disqualifies you. Your exterior world should disqualify you at some point from public adoration, because otherwise we're just putting up statues to slavers.
I mean, look, the point is taken, and by any means, Alex Higgins was not a perfect person, but I think that's why he was the people's champion in many ways. He did more for the sport. He kind of, because he was not perfect, people recognized the human frailty in him and kind of saw themselves in him a little bit. Obviously, some of the stuff he did was horrific. Run-ins with the law, run-ins with officials, assaults, bad relationships, drinking.
There was a death threat to Dennis Taylor.
Yeah, among many other things. I mean, he wasn't, if you ask many players, he wasn't a nice person to be around, and then he was the most nice person to be around. He was, there's two ends of the spectrum with Alex Higgins, but the fact is he brought so much joy to Irish people, and especially to people from Antrim back in the 80s. And he lived out a sad life. I saw him in his last 6 months before he died in 2010, and he was a 61-year-old man who looked at least 91 years of age. When he passed away, he wasn't found for a few days in his house in Belfast. A terrible end to. He
died of malnutrition. It was I don't know. Sorry, actually, there was definitely a story that came out that he died of malnutrition, and then there was another one correcting that 6 months later. So, apologies if I've got that wrong, or even bringing it up is incorrect. But I definitely remember that was immediately released, and then actually turned out that maybe it was the complications from the cancer. So, but it was credible at the time because his condition had deteriorated so badly. And by all accounts, he used to get the train down from Belfast to Dublin and hang around Dublin and then go back up to Belfast that night. So he would have been kind of spotted in the pubs and the bookies around Connolly Station quite a bit over the final few years of his life.
Complicated figure, for sure. And to ignore that in this discussion would be doing a disservice to the whole Mount Rushmore selection. But I think he has to be mentioned. I mean, he brought so much joy to Irish people. To see someone on the world stage doing what he did in the style that he did it as well. He was called the Hurricane for a reason. I mean, he flew around that table.
And look, 1972 was the grimmest year of the Troubles, and so Mary Peters wins gold and he wins the World Championship. And bear in mind, both of these events are broadcast again in colour TV to everybody's living room. So I accept that there's certainly a conversation to be had around him, and maybe there's an asterisk beside him as well. So anyway, what is actually happening in the world of sport today?
Yeah, we'll kick off with the Premier League, lads. Olivier Giroud's 6th goal in 10 games. I won't read the whole thing as GMAC. It'll be a bit difficult, and I'll leave the hat on, though, for now. We might as well. But Olivier Giroud's 6th goal in 10 games, strengthening Chelsea's claim in a top 4 place in the Premier League. The French striker's goal in first half injury time, enough to give Frank Lampard's side a 1-0 win over relegated Norwich at Stamford Bridge yesterday evening. Chelsea now 4 points clear of Manchester United this morning. United do, of course, have a game in hand, though. Chelsea boss Frank Lampard says he knows they're nearly there when it comes to Champions League qualification.
It's a tough one to call. It's hard. We know our fixtures are hard. So is everybody else's, really. This is the Premier League, and it's not easy. So I think, rather than give you a sort of pointless answer, we take our 3 points. We worry about ourselves. We can sort of sit down and watch the other teams play this week now and have the FA Cup as our focus for this weekend. But there's obviously still work to do.
Wolves continue their own quest for Champions League football this evening with a trip to Burnley. Elsewhere, third from bottom Bournemouth go to Manchester City, and Newcastle entertain Spurs. All of those games kick off at 6 p.m. this evening, and then at 8:15, champions Liverpool are away to Arsenal. In the Championship last night, plenty of action. Hull's chances of avoiding relegation look a little bleaker this morning. They were thrashed 8-0 by Wigan last night, 7-0 down by half-time, and remain a point from safety. Middlesbrough increased their hopes of beating the drop with a 2-1 win over Reading, while Luton drew 1-1 against Queen's Park Rangers. West Brom's 0-0 draw with Fulham edged them a little bit closer to automatic promotion alongside Leeds, possibly. Cardiff's playoff push remains on track following a 2-1 victory against Derby, and Millwall beat Blackburn by a 1-0 to remain in the hunt for the top 6. Sheffield Wednesday versus Huddersfield finished goalless. Brentford can move within a point of the top 2 by winning against Preston this evening. 5th place Nottingham Forest hosts Swansea, who are just outside the playoff spots. Charlton can pull further away from bottom 3 if they get the better of Birmingham, and Bristol City take on Stoke. Meanwhile, Hearts and Partick Thistle say they're incredulous to have received a charge from the Scottish FA. The clubs have been hit with a notice of complaint for taking their battle against relegation to court after COVID-19 ended the season in Scotland early. The case is due to go to arbitration next month. Some golf news this morning as well, lads. Tiger Woods has poured cold water on his potential Ryder Cup captaincy. It's been suggested that his captaincy of the President's Cup team could be a precursor to him leading the USA in Italy, but Woods claims that no discussions have been held regarding future captaincy roles. The 15-time major winner will play alongside Rory McIlroy and Brooks Koepka for the first rounds of this week's Memorial Tournament in Ohio. Woods says he'll need to get used to COVID-19 protocols.
It's going to be different. There's no doubt about it. I for most of my career, and pretty much almost every competitive playing around that I've been involved in, I've had people around me, spectators yelling, and a lot of movement inside the gallery with camera crews and media. Watching the players play over the last few weeks, that hasn't been the case, and it's a very, very different. And for the players that are a little bit older and that have played on here for a long time and have experienced it, very eye-opening, really.
Meanwhile, Jack Nicklaus insists he will not let the COVID-19 outbreak get in the way of the traditional congratulatory handshake he affords the winner at the Memorial Tournament he hosts. Nicklaus says, "I'm going to shake their hand. I'm going to walk right out there and shake your hand. If they don't want to shake my hand, that's fine. I'll give them a fist bump or an elbow bump, but I'm not going to give them COVID-19. I wouldn't put anybody in that position." He's confident he doesn't have COVID-19. Anyway, there's a 7-race card at Killarney this evening, lads, with the first off at 4:25. Meanwhile, at Downpatrick, a 7-race card goes to post at 1 o'clock. And finally, from me, Manchester United and England forward Marcus Rashford will receive an honorary doctorate from the University of Manchester later this summer. The award, which is the highest honour the university can bestow, will be for his remarkable campaign against child poverty off the field and outstanding sporting achievements on the pitch. Rashford helped Fairshare collect £20 million, enabling 3.9 million meals to be given out to vulnerable children. At age 22, he'll be the youngest ever recipient of an honorary degree from the university. He joins Alex Ferguson and Bobby Charlton on the list of those who have received one.
Yeah, I really hope that his playing career continues to get better and better and better. I've changed my mind. I'm all in on Marcus Rashford now because he's one of the best humans playing football at the moment. Shane, good stuff. Thanks very much, and keep lobbying for GMAC and for Alex
Cheers,
Higgins,
lads.
and we'll see how we get on.
Fair play.
Thanks very much for that. There was one other point that if lobbying is allowed in terms of our families, in 1956, the GA introduced individual awards for the very first time. So this is kind of before All Stars. The hurling award went to Nicky Rackard. The football award went to Sean Purcell. And my Auntie Maeve took the Camogie award. So pretty exalted company for. So it was the 10 in a row. They stopped in 56. They beat Dublin in the semi-final. And they beat Cork in the final. And then they won again in 67. So
what sort of player was she, very quickly?
Forward, as far as I know. Like a kind of a game-dominating, deep-lying midfielder / forward. She'd kill you, basically, if you needed killed, but she would also score if the team needed to score. So, I don't know, Nicky Rackard equivalent, whatever you need to be to do that. Right, so apologies. Where are we going next? We are going to, here's what's coming up in the show this morning for you. Going to get into the papers, going to bring you the Beef is Real, which is an old new slot that we're bringing back because, frankly, Clive Tilsley versus Hairy Hands, Richard Keys needed something, and the Beef is Real is the only way that we could do with this proper justice. 8:35. Mount Rushmore from County Antrim coming your way at 8:45. And Anson Boon is on the OTB Culture Hall of Fame. Who is Anson Boon, Owen, for people who don't know?
Anson Boon, one of the best young actors in the world right now, North London kid who has been in 1917. He's been in Blackbird, which is going to get a big release, a lot of coverage, I reckon, later in the year because of coronavirus. He is somebody to keep an eye on for a long, long time. Coronavirus came at a pretty bad time for him, but as the interview will explain later on, he's made positives out of it, and he's already racked up quite a CV and quite an array of different jobs. So the future looks unbelievably bright for him. Is a Spurs fan, though, is the only mark against.
0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number here. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. It's time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
So the Front page of otbsports.com for you this morning. There's no way that at least 6 of them aren't on something. This is strong words from Lizzie Lee talking about her competition in the marathon globally. And then Clive Tilsley, upset, annoyed, baffled. Clive Tilsley axed as ITV lead commentator. Where's my support been? James McClean explains social media post. He went on TalkSport yesterday morning. It was an effing shambles. Damien Duff reopening the can of worms that is Saipan. He was like, it's very interesting from Duffer. He's like, Roy Keane was dead right to give out about the situation, but I was selfish. I was a footballer. I just wanted to get in the team and win my place. So Duffer reopening some old wounds there. Maybe. Anyway, we'll come back to that. We can definitely come back to that. So I'm going to tell you what's in the newspapers. All of the English newspapers have essentially got the same thing. It's Premier League at war. It's Pep, Jose and Klopp, and everybody has a variation of these. I'll run you through the headlines. Stop whispering about my club, look in our eyes and say it to our face. That's what Pep Guardiola wants. Mourinho says it's a circus, the circus door is open, financial fair play is dead, it's a disgrace. And Klopp says this was not a good day for football, the richest clubs do what they want. So that's the same in The Guardian there. Mourinho vents fury at disgraceful City verdict while Klopp warns of breakaway. The Times of London is exactly the same. Klopp, City's reprieve, bad for football. Pep, the tabloids have gone for the other angle. Say you're sorry. And then fighting talk from the Mirror. Again, it's Pep, it's that same photograph of him. And here he is laughing. Say sorry. And then stay sorry is the other one. Then talks over fresh deal put on hold about Pep Guardiola. Talks can wait. So there was a lot of Guardiola. And then now, say sorry is the back of the Mail for you this morning. Some interesting stories in the broadsheets this morning. One last one from the Herald there, clear out. So they're saying that all the dead wood at Manchester United are going to be kicked out and they're going to have a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to both salary and transfer fees. The Irish Times, obviously, here I'm going to give you that one there instead. So Jerry Thorney, I haven't seen this anywhere else. CVC cuts Six Nations offered by half to 165 million as talks continue on new deals. So last week, Bernard Laporte was like, it's going to be grand. We're going to get loads of money from this. And this week, apparently, CVC have decided that they think that maybe the price they were paying pre-COVID shouldn't be the price that they're paying post-COVID for a sport that might not have spectators at it for quite a significant future. And who knows what the value of broadcast deals are actually going to be. So at the start of March, Thorney reports the deal was about 330 million. And now the offer is 165 million, but sources believe that there'll be an intermediate point around 200 to 220 million, which was actually the original price when the conversations started. So we'll wait and see exactly what's going to happen with that one. But you don't want the price of your product to be going down by 165 million when the tide is going out and all of a sudden you're struggling financially. That Solskjaer story is also the back of the Irish Independent this morning, but good stuff here. GAA rule that casual contacts with COVID cases can keep playing. The GAA have updated their guidance to clubs about how to deal with suspected or positive COVID-19 cases, with players and personnel allowed to continue their involvement if they remain symptom-free. So Fergal McGill says it's quite simple. If someone in a club gets the symptoms of COVID, they should contact their GP. If their GP thinks they need to, they'll arrange testing. Public health then takes over. If it's negative, the player can return to activity. If it's positive, the player's COVID, public health also takes over. Public health will do an assessment of the player's movements in the previous days and will make a decision as to who should be considered a close contact or a casual contact in the GAA context. And if you're a casual contact, you're grand. If you're a close contact, then you have to quarantine. So they're going to continue to close dressing rooms and facilities. But I guess the Examiner have been kind of leading the charge on this over the last few days, and they've had a couple of good pieces, and there's another one there this morning. So that GAA to advise on club games impacted by COVID-19 issues is the news piece from John Fogarty. There's an interesting column from Michael Moynihan. Is our rush to return to sport a risk worth taking? And I suppose, Owen, this is the bit where we kind of need to tease things out. There's a great line in this where he's talking about the Glamworth GAA chairman yesterday in the Examiner, saying, I think it's going to take, touch wood, it won't happen, a death from GAA-related activity for the GAA to act on it. I don't want us to be the guinea pigs to be the cause of a local death. And Michael Moynihan says, the irony which no one seems to want to articulate is that an organisation which was front and centre in aiding communities through the lockdown has the potential to revive the virus. Depending on your perspective, the GAA's return to competitive games may not be the most pressing threat to the country's health at present. We seem to be hearing a lot about flights arriving in Ireland from the dark heart of the virus in the US, as though plane loads of American tourists were parachuting in a la the Normandy landings all of them doing their best to share their symptoms with the populace looking up fearfully as they descend. What seems far more threatening is a mass explosion and people moving all over Ireland to go to GAA games. So I think that what's freaked people out is that the Glanworth scenario was somebody came down from Dublin and obviously had the virus and I presume has come back to self-quarantine in Dublin. Obviously we wish them all the best, but this is kind of how things spread, right?
For sure, and we kind of touched on this a little bit yesterday as well, that what is going to happen in the GAA, especially the weekend after this one, when you get into, phase 4, when you can have 500 people at an outdoor gathering, isn't too far removed from scenes that people would have been rightfully disgraced at, I guess, when it came to footage being filmed on cameras. It will be safer, it will be more controlled, and there will be contact tracing, of course, but this is the first step back into spectator sport in this country. It's the first step back into spectator sport in this hemisphere, in our consciousness of how sport operates. We've been watching Premier League games in front of no fans. Like the rugby isn't going to have any fans there next month, is it? Like no. So the GAA is very much leading the charge in bringing hundreds of people together to watch sport happen, travelling from different places to watch them happen. Michael Moynihan's caution is very, very well placed. I think outdoor is going to be fine. It's just making sure that they don't congregate at any point. Certainly that would be the conversations that we've had with people who've been studying this. Finally for me, the Racing Post, enable in arc attack mode and ready to build on fine reappearance, and RTE to end extra hour-long racing broadcasts. So all those extra racing shows are finished. And then the OTB Sports app for you this morning to tell you what's up there at the moment. There's your feed, personalised, depending on what sports you actually like. So Sarah Rowe talking last night. So obviously somebody's signed up to our GAA feed, and you can scroll down and get the very latest podcasts. You don't even have to leave the homepage to get the latest podcasts, and then more stuff for you there as well. Although, alternatively, if you do want to, you can just click on the radio button and non-stop. So we had a Robbie Keane Gold interview on before us this morning from 7 o'clock. Great stuff all day from our archives, a lot of evergreen material, and then a full list of our podcasts that you can subscribe to. And it is best if you subscribe to them, because then, and if you enable notifications anytime you want to know that we've actually updated it for whatever it is that you're interested in, we'll ping you a little message and you just click it and automatically it plays for you. It's like a little miracle in your pocket for nothing. Just search for OTB Sports in the App Store or on Google Play. Now, if you want to get in touch with us, you can WhatsApp us here. 087 918 180 is the number, or use the hashtag OTB AM. It's time for The Beef is Real.
Well, I don't like him. And I don't have to work with people I don't like.
Patrick Vieira is 6'4". Starts having a go at Gary Neville. He says, come and have a go at me.
You should have gone to Specsavers, Charlie.
Well, maybe you should go also then, Jeff, because you couldn't see driving home the other night.
Don't you ever talk about me!
So I think your arguments back and forward there, Tony. That's the point.
I'm wondering...
Just let me finish. Let me finish.
I'm let you finish. It's pure constipated.
You can forget about Sean Kavanagh as far as he's a man.
If you're going to be critical, then you've got to make sure you've got something to back it up with, don't you?
Maybe the coaches were maybe panicking a little bit.
To me, you've got to have a little bit of a better record than that.
The beef is real.
The beef is real. Right. We're bringing this back. We're starting it anew. This is the first time ever this has actually properly been thought out, Owen, I have to say. I mean, we've talked about it for a long time. But finally, there is a beef that is worthy of its own sting and the start of a new series, right?
This is as seismic as beef has ever been. Whether you like it rare, medium rare, well done, it doesn't matter how you like it.
Still mooing.
This beef is delicious, no matter what way you take it, no matter what guise it is, if it's burger, if you're getting stuck into it with a fork and knife, it doesn't matter. This is the juiciest beef you're ever going to get. So, well, do you want to pick up the story from yesterday? Because this is quite something. This is a narrative that exploded that I don't think too many people would have expected.
I had never seen a Clive Tilsley video on the internet ever until the weekend, when he told a brilliant story about Jack Charlton and really caught the zeitgeist about Jack as an after-dinner speaker and Jack as a man, and he talked about it. I was like, that's really interesting, Clive Tilsley doing videos. Turns out 2 or 3 weeks ago, he was relieved of his duties as the lead commentator at ITV, and he was building up to it. That was the carpaccio. This is the fillet steak for main course. Have a look at this yesterday.
If you haven't seen the announcement, I am being replaced as ITV's senior football commentator. Quite a few people have been in touch with me asking me to react, to comment. I'm not sure that would be a very good idea at the moment. I was told about 3 weeks ago, so I have had some time to get my head around the decision, but I haven't got my head around it. To be clear, this is ITV's decision, not mine, and I'm upset, annoyed, baffled. I would have been interested with commentating the Euro 2020 final for them less than 48 hours ago, but now, I won't be commentating on any of the big England games in the coming year, and I'm going to miss them. I love this job.
So that's the first 30 seconds of a 2 minutes and 25 seconds. How long is it? It's 2 minutes and 16 seconds. How many views, Owen? How many views? 5.9 million views. And that's just on his. People have ripped it and pretended that they're uploading it natively to their own accounts. That's just on his own. 5.9 million times that video has been watched.
Like the video is really the veg on the side. The beef is the thing that has given this veg all its flavour and all those views. So 5 seconds into this video, Clive Tilsley says that a few people have been in touch with him to comment, and he says it would not be wise for him to comment at the moment, and then continues to speak for another 2 minutes and 11 seconds, essentially commenting on everything that's happened to him at ITV. He did forget to tag Sky Sports in the tweet, is one thing I would say, and I've got a huge admiration for how Clive Tilsley actually manages to commentate his everyday life. Referring to himself, he says, "I'm a lucky boy," as if he's just escaped a red card offence by just getting a yellow card, is how he talks about himself. "I'm well able, I'm available," he says. "It is a come and get me plea." On its own, before we get into the beef, this is an incredible moment.
I think that it's genius, right?
It's just something so unusual. It's not something we would ever see. There is a certain
the marketing campaign. It's
the decision to do this. Yeah,
it's one of the best marketing campaigns you're ever going to see. I saw Ciarán Cunningham on Twitter going, "What the hell was it?" And initially that was my reaction too. And then, as it takes off, you realise suddenly his value has exploded. Because when Sky or BT or whoever sign him, it becomes this massive self-fulfilling story that everybody just writes about because it's got 5.9 million views. No one thought they cared about this, really.
It's true.
No one really thought, and they probably don't, but it turns out,
And he's also really, really good at what he does, so it wouldn't be a stupid decision from Sky Sports to take him on the back of the fact that he's got 5 million views. But there isn't everybody who's going to generate that sort of conversation. But
sorry, just very briefly, Andy Lee always makes the point that if there's 4 sports happening in a town square, the fight in the corner is the one that everybody goes over to and watches, just for at least for the start to see what's going to happen here. Everything else, you can have whoever. But if you've got a fight going on over in the corner, everybody's just going to have a look at this, make sure I don't miss anything, and that's what's happened.
Yeah, it really is. So yesterday, Clive Tilsley, you know the BBC video with Professor Rob Kelly, is this the guy who's talking about South Korea and his kid bursts into the room to interrupt the BBC interview? Clive Tilsley is the professor talking about South Korea, and Richard Keys is the kid bursting into the room to make this thing go absolutely nuts. Richard Keys' blog, by the way, is quite a thing to behold. 24 hours before posting this blog post, he had written another one about Newcastle's takeover and mentioned bombing the shit out of Yemen, and crazy, really incredible reading in Richard Keys' blog ordinarily. But this is just on a level above this entirely, because not only does he address Clive Tilsley, he starts to open this can of worms that I didn't even realise was a can of worms up until yesterday. I did not realise that there were a load of things that were left to be unsaid in the Richard Keys and Sky Sports story. But in incredible Richard Keys fashion, he has made the Clive Tilsley getting shoved by ITV story a Richard Keys story, which you have to say is in itself a genius move. We are watching 2 of the most genius marketeers in the world right now talking about themselves. This is now become a situation where you look at the Richard Keys at Sky Sports situation, and wrongly you were stroking your chin going, is there more than meets the eye here? Is this a situation where it's like the unwritten Game of Thrones book that we've been waiting for years and years and years, where Richard Keys is eventually going to pen what happened at Sky Sports? And this has been an incredible theme that Richard Keys has got stuck into over the last couple of years. We will get into the blog in just a moment, but I just want to play a piece of audio from a few years ago. It's from the video when he appeared, I think, with Des Kelly on BT Sport. And he talks about Ciarán Massey, the third official on the day, and the offside law and the sexist remarks being made in the Sky Sports studio, his justification of this and his attempt to shroud everything in mystery is actually worth some applause, I think. Have a look at this.
Big call on half-time, which she got right. When I rang her and spoke to her on the Sunday, I cannot tell you the relief that she was still feeling that she got it right. And she said to me, thank you for not showing the other one, because she got one horribly wrong. And we made the decision we wouldn't show it because it wasn't fair. She also said to me, please, it was just banter. And I said, I know that, Ciarán. I know that, and you know. She said, I expected it last week at Sunderland. It's just a little bit of fun. I said, I know, but there are other people now who have decided it's not, and it's out of hand, so I need to apologise. There's so much of the minutiae I would love to get in with you, but we'd be here all night.
We got time, I'll tell you.
No, we haven't, trust me.
If it's interesting...
We haven't.
Otherwise, do you have any regrets?
None. I regret much about what happened around and about us, but I don't... listen, how did a conversation from a studio recorded on a mobile phone find its way to the Mail on Sunday? Now, you tell me.
Again, I'd rather not right now.
No, because I've told you and you know, and I know too, but that's not for now.
It was just banter. Was actually her words to me, not my words to her. It's funny how she said the thing that you said. And the attribution in that. Look, we weren't there, we didn't hear the conversation, did we?
No, the only thing BT Sport failed to do in that night was every time Richard Keys cast further aspersions on his dismissal from Sky Sports, it should have been like a quick zoom on Richard Keys as he was going like this to say, well, did I actually get sacked, or did somebody push me? Did somebody actually leak the thing to the Daily Mail, or was I sacked legitimately? This is the card he's been playing for quite some time, and he gave us a whole deck of them yesterday. So I don't know how we want to do this. I've got a Mount Rushmore of lines from Richard Keys' blog yesterday, because I think this is the only way to do it justice. Even this is like the Dublin Mount Rushmore. Even the lines that don't make it are still worth reading because they're so good. But for me, this is the top four. So first couple of paragraphs, a little bit of sympathy for Clive here, a little bit of, kind of feel sorry for your plight, blah, 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 blah. But then it becomes about Richard very quickly. Try leaving a company for good, he says, watching them drip feed nonsense into the media, and then calling your prospective employee to a meeting to threaten them with financial penalties if they continued with their plans to employ you. We thought we buried them. We don't want this, 3 senior Sky executives told the commercial manager of TalkSport, summoned to a meeting at Gillette Corner. Oh, there's so much more, but that is for another time.
Oof.
He's the biggest tease in the world.
Oof. Go on, what's next?
What is this? The second head on Mount Rushmore is about Clive, actually, not about Richard Keys. Or not about... it is not about Richard Keys, actually. He was better than anything, he says, of Clive. National Radio had at the time. He was better than anything National Radio had at the time, and he knew it. Although it didn't help that he told the bosses at the BBC that his grandmother was a better commentator than they had. And this was a job interview. He returned from London to a Birkenhead pub for drinks with me and Bob Paisley. He never applied to Radio Sport again. There's a lot going on there. I'm not sure how happy Clive Tilsley would be about the line about his grandmother actually being made public. Clive is a nice guy, he says. This is line number 3. He's deeply thoughtful and he cares. He cares about so many people, and he's always the first to show if you've got a problem. Although I haven't heard anything from him these past 5 years. I don't know why. Shrug emoji. That's how I know ITV's decision will have cut him to the core. But it isn't terminal, Clive. It isn't over. Far from it. There's something so Machiavellian about even the way Richard Keys punctuates his blog. It's incredible poetry, really, and it's right on brand. The final line, I digress. It's not the end of the world, Clive, although I know how it feels right now. It's the end of an era. Sam is a good call. Enjoy it, mate. Oh, watch out, Martin! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Bringing a third party into the debate here. Martin Tyler, get ready to get shoved by Clive Tilsley.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately that's where this is going to end up, right? A big money move across town, and everybody goes, well, that was like a little interesting diversion when there was a global pandemic on, and we might have, had a lesser attention span than Although I don't know, maybe this story would have been a massive celebrity story 6 months ago before the pandemic. Who knows? Like, it seems people are actually genuinely interested in this stuff. Is that it? Is that the end of the beef is real?
Yeah, I think that this is a big story no matter when it happens. If this happens in the middle of a World Cup, it's a big story. This is as big as sports stories get, really.
The beef is tripartite. It's ITV versus Clive Tilsley, and then somewhere sitting in the middle of all this, pretending to be a marionette, is Richard Keys. So check out Richard Keys' blog is essentially your advice, and have it ready to go anytime. 087 918 180 is the number here if you want to get in touch by WhatsApp. The brand new OTB Sports app is available for download right now. And a reminder that OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. We've got a brilliant interview with actor Anson Boon coming up after 9 this morning. But up next, it's the 30th county on our tour around the country as Antrim get the Mount Rushmore treatment. We're back with Neil McManus, Ciarán Barr and Stephen Ferris after this.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
There's a growing hostility towards cyclists. We're somehow seen as a nuisance, when in fact we're just people trying to get to work.
I've never ever gotten one bad word said to me about my sexuality, or from the opposition, or from, actually in one bad time, the girl was marking me so tightly, I was like, I have a girlfriend.
I'm not the person I was 10 years ago, and that doesn't worry me. I know I can play good enough golf.
Don't miss the panel every Saturday afternoon, only on Off the Ball.
Missing this?
Salah takes the shot. Oh, Mo Salah with one of the goals of the season. Unbelievable.
Then get this, the all-new OTB Sports app. Off the Ball, Ireland's premier sports channel, now has a new home, featuring the biggest names in Irish and world sports. Podcasts, interviews, news, commentary, analysis, plus almost 20 years of sporting archives. All free and ready when you are, at home or on the go. The new OTB Sports app. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. OTB AM's Mount Rushmore.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
And you're into some fairly storied careers. We actually were speculating about this earlier, that we could actually have had a simple boxing Mount Rushmore from Belfast, let alone the entire county of Antrim. We've somewhat loaded the dice early on in this part of the conversation, in that we have two hurlers with us. Our selector this week is Neil McManus, of course, from Antrim and also Cushendall. And the challenger this week is Ciarán Barr, who, of course, hurled with Antrim in the 80s and was a good Vincent's Club man. So I feel a little bit guilty here, Neil, in that we actually don't have anybody yet from rugby. We'll get Stephen Ferris a little bit later on. So am I having four hurlers on Mount Rushmore? Is that what's happening?
That would be my preference, Ger, but unfortunately in Antrim, that's probably not how it's gonna pan out. The first two hurlers really who come to mind are Terence McNaughton from my own club in Cushendall, and the man on the other end of the call here, Ciarán Barr. He was our first ever Ulster All-Star in 1988. He captained Antrim to the All-Ireland final in 1989. He was also a renowned water polo player as well. So Ciarán would be somebody that we'd be very proud of in County Antrim. He also played in the All-Ireland club final with his club, Donovan Rossa. But there's been so many great sports people come out of Belfast, alone, from snooker, such as Alex Higgins, from even, you look at the boxing talent that we have had through Renty Monaghan, from a long time ago, but Dave Boy McCauley, Wayne McCulloch, even recently in the likes of Carl Frampton, we're spoiled for choice whenever it comes to sport in Belfast and the county of Antrim.
Yeah, a bunch of boxing medals in the Olympics as well, which we might get to. Ciarán, when you were a kid, who were the GAA sports idols that you would have kind of heard stories about or read about or had conversations to you, like that were inspirational for you guys from that team that did come through in the 80s?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to answer the question that or I'm not going to give you the answer that you might think I might give you. So I would say one of the first people that I would have been aware of from Belfast or from Antrim would have been Mary Peters. Just Olympics, the whole idea of the Olympics in the 70s. You had the World Cup in the 70s and then, Brazilian team. And then all of a sudden out of the blue, I'm 55, so I was born in 64. All of a sudden in the middle of the Troubles, we have this girl who comes back with a gold medal from the Olympics. We're like, how'd that happen? Who's she? Never completely no idea who she was or what she did. And now when you look back, that she won that competition and the people that she won it against, it was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. So she would have been one of the first sports people I would have had in my head, and as a star player, a star athlete, and like you would have watched that Olympics and subsequent Olympics, and it was like you kept saying to yourself, "But Mary Peters is the Olympic champion." Like it's like sounds ridiculous when you say it now, but she from Northern Ireland, from Belfast, the Olympic champion, amazing. One of the other people, I guess, hurling wise with my own club, a fellow called Sean Collins, super player, the Hamels. But one of the Donnellys, Eddie Donnelly, I would have been conscious of Eddie Donnelly as a kid, playing for Ballycastle. Ballycastle were in a couple of All-Ireland club finals. He played for Antrim and Ulster for years and years and years. And if Eddie Donnelly had been around when I was playing or when Neil was playing, like Eddie Donnelly would be one of the first guys to pick on the team. Very, very great player, but a genuinely nice guy, super fella. And I was only an 18, 19-year-old coming into the panel. He was like in his 30s, senior guy, leading the panel, on the last sort of season or two of his career. So he was one of the guys that was somebody that I was conscious of. But Belfast, as you said, like George Best. As a kid, I never saw him play. But as a kid, you're growing up. And you're playing soccer matches and you're playing in somebody's back garden and someone always wanted to be George Best, And again, from where he came from and what he did, extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary talent.
This is where we get into the controversial element of things in our Mount Rushmore series because George Best is already etched into the mountain of County Down. So what is your response to that, first of all?
There you go, So I know the River Lagan is the problem there, so we'll give him the County Down if they want him. Who cares? As long as he's in there somewhere.
Not a bad time to be growing up, though, as a sports fan. So you've got a gold medal in the Olympics in '72, and that's off the back of a European Cup and a European Footballer of the Year from George Best. And then Alex Higgins kind of burst onto the consciousness of the world around that time. That's kind of the beginning of him becoming Hurricane Higgins as well. So, and all the boxers before that in the 50s and 60s, and that kind of continues through. Barry McGuigan fights big fights in the King's Hall as well. So, why was Belfast such a hotbed of international talent?
I think the boxing is the classic. You look at where boxers come from in general; it's usually pretty rough, tough, no messing places, And Belfast was a working shipyard, working docks. The same in Dublin, the same in any of these towns that you go around. The US, the same thing. You need to be from the wrong side of the tracks, and there was plenty of that in Belfast. And that boxing, I read a great book recently, Sunshine and Shadow, Don McKay, about Story, Jerry's story. Amazing, and I grew up in all of that. Hughie Russell, Wayne McCulloch, Barry McGuigan, but before that, Minty Monaghan, as Neil mentioned, boxing in Belfast was sort of in the DNA. Didn't matter which side you came from because it was working class. And I remember as a kid, my father sending us down to the Dominic Savio Boxing Club in Falls Road to toughen us up. Go down, throw a few punches, find out whether you're able to take a punch and give a punch. I was only I'd say 6. Last a couple of months, and then hurling and football, swimming, water. You can't keep doing everything. But my dad thought, I'd throw him down there, see all of us, to see what it was like. So there was always that. There was a boxing thing in Belfast. It was just a thing. But it comes from being tough, and it's a hard sport. It's so hard a sport. It's like professional cycling. Like they're loners, and they can take pain. You know, it's a sport where you have to be able to suffer pain. So I'll jump slightly there, right, to somebody else who should definitely be on the list, who's AP McCoy. We talk about a guy who can take pain. Like, that's serious. Keeping your weight down for years and years and years, falling off horses at 30, 40 miles an hour. Like, geez, that's serious. Like, and then to be the top of a professional sport that is cutthroat. Because if you're no good at that, you don't last. You're not a good jockey. No one's paying you any money. You ride horses for somebody for amateur. But if those guys are the top of their profession, really are. That's a tough game.
Yeah.
So McCoy would be up there, you know.
I think McCoy. I think in all of the lists that we've done, AP McCoy would be a shoe-in any county, just by virtue of the fact that he was the number one every year for so long. And like we saw when he would fall, we would watch it. And again, it's that old adage about it's one of the few jobs in the world where an ambulance follows you around when you're actually at work. Neil, can I ask you, growing up in Cushendall, how aware of Mary Peters are you? How aware of AP McCoy are you? Like, is Mary Peters just a hero everywhere for all school kids?
Well, Mary Peters, I suppose, whenever you were being taught anything about athletics, you know, and you're even in secondary school, Mary Peters was always the go-to. You know, there's a quite a well-known running track in Belfast named after Mary Peters as well, and I think she kind of broke the mold. You know, we've had a lot of obviously boxing success professionally and at amateur level in the Olympics for probably the last 30 years. But Mary Peters kicked that off. She kind of did put Belfast on the map from an athletics viewpoint. But in Cushendall, obviously, it's an area steeped in GAA. So Terence McNaughton was a very automatic hero for so many of the village of the county. And you know, whenever I was growing up and starting to learn about hurling, it was the early 90s. So Antrim were really strong. Antrim had competed in Division 1 for the past sort of 6-7 years. Had obviously been to that All-Ireland final. We would also have been very aware that there was lots of other really good sportsmen. You only have to look at the the Dunlops, who are just outside Ballymoney.
It's hard, I think, for people who don't come from a motorbiking and a TT tradition to fully understand just how good Joey Dunlop was, Ciarán. But when I was asking my friends who are from Belfast, who's on your Mount Rushmore, the first name, unequivocally, was Joey Dunlop. Why? Like, can you put any context on that for people who don't fully understand just how amazing he was?
Well, I think, first of all, right, Joey Dunlop was on my list. So AP McCoy and Joey Dunlop I had together, like two jockeys, effectively. But what you'd want to do is you'd want to drive up to the northwest and around Cushendall and then out to Ballymoney and then up to Coleraine and then actually drive the road or the roads that these guys race on. That's number one. And you just go, like, that's crazy stuff. And then the skill of them and the speed that they do it at is just off the radar. And then they go and do TTs and they race all around the world. So these fellas, and Neil would know more about them than me, because in West Belfast there used to be joyriders, not motorcycle riders. But like, it's a big tradition in the Northwest. It's a big thing, mechanical excellence, machines, the riders on those machines. It's a big culture. And there's people come from all over the world to go and watch those races in the northwest of the island. And like, I've driven on the roads, Bush Mills, up around there, and you just think these guys are racing on these things. It's extraordinary, the speeds that they're going at. But back to McCoy, it's like every year being able to repeat it, staying at the top for that long. That's the extraordinary thing, their dedication to it and the lifestyle of it. And clearly they loved it, because there wasn't a whole lot of money in it. They weren't doing it for a lot of money. But Joey Dunlop, like, as a kid, you would have been aware of him. As a young man, you would have been aware of him as he was coming through. the whole Dunlop family, but him especially, and a very reserved sort of a person. You'd see him be interviewed on the television. He didn't have a lot to say, which is sort of the charisma about him as well, because massively courageous. He just had to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Neil, you're back there now. What can you tell us about that role that Joey Dunlop has? And you, when you're a kid, what does the name actually mean for you?
Like, Joey Dunlop, now his family would live very close to where my wife is from, and he's a legendary figure in that sport. He is somebody who's totally committed to it, obviously, and a very sad ending to his his motorcycle career, along with his brother Robert. But he is world renowned. Unfortunately for the GA guys, like Terence McNaughton and Ciarán Barr, didn't have the opportunity to be world renowned, but they were totally my heroes and the heroes for me and my friends growing up. But to the people of, like, they were known as the Armoy Armada. That's what that group of motorcyclists were known as, and because they were fearless, totally and utterly fearless. And the next generation of Dunlops has just carried that on, and the name will live with motorcycling all around the world. You have to remember, from this tiny small place, these guys who fixed their own motorbikes at the kitchen table, who didn't really get involved in the professional side of the sport too much because they were in it for the love of the sport. They managed to really captivate an entire nation who would follow them anywhere around the world. Obviously, unfortunately, Joey died in, I think it was Estonia, in a race. But it was massive news at home when that happened, because like he was revered all around that area because he was such a nice guy, a humble guy, but he loved motorcycle racing. And he was a hero to so many people who are involved in that sport, which is massive along our coast.
So the way this works is obviously Neil makes his selections, Ciarán can edit it, and then we get a final pick of somebody, and that's going to be Stephen Ferris in a moment. We haven't spoken about rugby. Obviously, there's famous Ireland and Lions captains. We haven't talked about soccer yet either. And Brendan Rodgers' career has not been fully told just yet, and he's had a really excellent managerial career. I don't know where Billy Bingham was from, but does Billy Bingham have a case for being on Mount Rushmore? Ciarán, he was part of the team in '58. That's beats Czechoslovakia, and do they reach a quarterfinals or definitely quarterfinals of a World Cup, or they get out of a group, and then obviously takes the team to a World Cup in '82 and again in '86 as a manager.
I'd say it'd be some players on that team. Jerry Armstrong, who played for St John's GAA club, great footballer, and then became a professional soccer player. Like, Jerry was a fantastic athlete, great speed. That famous goal that he scored against Spain in that World Cup was amazing. Norman Whiteside, another, people forget about, 17-year-old from Man United, first class, a very, very good footballer. Now, on the rugby, we haven't talked about the rugby, but I can see Stephen has joined us. On the rugby side, when I was a kid, Willie John McBride, was right up there. I actually played rugby for a couple of seasons as a schoolboy just to try it out. I played for Cook and I played for Malone. And the reason I stopped playing rugby was because I couldn't defend myself. You get stuck at the bottom of a rock. And you get walked all over. At least in a hurling match, I had a hurling stick to defend myself with. But Willie John McBride was very clearly in my conscience as a kid, as was Mike Gibson. And Mike Gibson was world class, world class. Anybody that I ever met in the rugby circles, and you mentioned great players, and these would be French people or what, Mike Gibson was a legendary rugby player, probably under recognized because he wasn't a big personality, he wasn't the captain, but I think rugby people realize. And then way back, Jack Kyle, I think, is a Belfast guy, and that's you could have a whole show on him, Dr. Jack. So rugby was very much in my conscience. I think all young people, from Ireland, you're watching the Irish team, you support the Irish rugby team, and they had a really good team when I was growing up. There was old bunch. David Irwin was the captain, another doctor, Even though we were sort of on the outside of it, you were conscious of it and conscious of the excellence of it and the fact that they were coming up against huge rugby playing countries. And that sort of typified Willie John McBride being the captain of Lions in South Africa, having been there before and lost, and then ended up being the captain of a winning team. That's a brilliant achievement. You know?
Yeah, and even just that, and Trevor England's name. You know, he's another Antrim man who was an Irish international and a Lion. I think actually Willie John McBride still holds the records for the number of Lions caps. You know, it's just tells, you know, this is incredible for a man from such a small place as Ballyclare is, but he's left his mark in rugby all right.
Neil, you've got to pick two before we bring in Stephen here. So, like, it sounds to me like Tony McCoy and Mary Peters are absolute certs.
Yeah, I think so. I really couldn't leave out Joey Dunlop either, to be honest. He, you know, or Terence McNaughton. This is very, very tough. Like, you have to realise that I can't go back to Cushendall unless I put Terence McNaughton in this selection.
Okay, you can give me four names here, and we're so give me your first two anyway. Who are the first two? No ifs, ands, or buts.
My first two are AP McCoy and Joey Dunlop.
Okay, all right. So we have a little bit of wiggle room here. Stephen Ferris, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, Jerry. Keeping all right?
I'm keeping very well. I have to say, I think that there would have been a very good chance that you would have played your way onto this, but for your ankle injury. I'm not just buttering you up. I think that the trajectory of your career was explosive.
I'm not sure about that.
So listen, as a young kid growing up in County Antrim, because that's what we're talking about here, what was the situation with regards to who your rugby idols would have been?
Well, you know, I can remember sitting watching the European Cup semi-final, Stade Francais in Belfast, David Humphreys, you know, passing the ball, chip kick over the top, Reid Gallagher, pass back inside, and him scoring that unbelievable try that will live long in the memory of all the rugby fans, all the Ulster rugby fans. So, yeah, that was, I can remember sitting on my friend's settee eating a bag of potato, cheese and onion, like, at the time of that happening. And that was the first kind of going, geez, you know, wow, that was just world class. And then from there, you know, you were kicking on, watching guys like Tyrone Howe, who they ended up, you know, playing alongside with Dungannon, with Ulster. Big Andy Ward, who I'm friends with now, captained Ulster to the European glory in 1989. So yeah, there was around that era. Jerry, I wasn't somebody that watched, you know, didn't go to Ulster matches when I'm 7, 8, 9 years of age watching the team. So I think somebody like David Humphreys or Andy Ward along that mould would be lads that I would have looked up to when I was sort of coming through the teenage years.
And in terms of historical guys, like Willie John got to mention there, I think the Mike Dean conversation is really interesting as well, because it might be somebody who people wouldn't automatically have gone to straight away, but with a bit of thought, you're kind of going, actually, hang on a second now, maybe Willie John is very iconic, but maybe there's actually a better player over here.
Yeah, possibly. Like Willie John's, 80 years of age now? He's so many accolades, 5 Lions tours, you know, captained the Lions, the Test Series wins, beating New Zealand, like South Africa, obviously destroying them, and was it 74? Like so.
Sorry, I meant Mike Gibson there. Sorry, I completely misspoke.
Sorry.
Yes, not the referee, Mike Dean. That would have been.
Who is also a legend.
I would probably disagree with you, Jer. I would probably disagree with you. I think Willie John McBride is held a little more highly than Mike Gibson, and I think that's just because of, you know, those 5 Lions tours, like, you know, and going over to South Africa and really being the leader. 71 was it against New Zealand? He was one of the main guys there, and he always backed it up. He always led from the front, and I think if you spoke to 100 people walking down the street here in County Antrim, and you asked them to name one player from County Antrim that's played for Ireland, represented the Lions from the rugby era, I would say the majority of them would probably say Willie John McBride. So that's why I would edge towards him.
Okay, that's fair enough. In terms of actually the strength of the game when you were growing up and the club scene? Is it a vibrant club scene in Belfast and Antrim, or is it still a traditional route you're coming through the schools?
Yeah, I think it's going from strength to strength. Obviously, the Belfast schools really are, you know, if you're going to make strides and try and get into the professional game, there's no doubt the 4 or 5, even Wallace High School there in Lisburn now is coming on leaps and bounds. So, yeah, the school system definitely is the strongest way to enhance your rugby and try and move forward if you're looking to get into Ulster academies and under 18, 19 squads. But the club game, you look at Ballymena, you know, fantastic club, has had some success over the years. Coleraine, I'm up in Portrush here at the minute. Ballymoney's a real good rugby club, a really good social scene to it. And I think, yeah, it can get stronger, Ger. Definitely 100% can get a lot stronger. But it's in no way in a bad place.
Has Kelly's at Portrush reopened just yet for all the students to have their nights out?
There's Darren Cave's actually just opened a coffee shop around in Port Stewart, so the queues have been down the street. So they have. I've yet to have been invited round for a free coffee and a free donut yet.
Good timing. Is there anybody else, Stephen, who you think deserves a shout from a rugby perspective? It sounds like there's a clear hierarchy in your mind. Like, hopefully in terms of a conversation about this, but when you kind of think about him being the number one out half for at least half a decade, and driving Ronan O'Gara to the heights where Ronan O'Gara ends up on the Cork Mount Rushmore, you know, he's not a million miles away.
No, he's not. He's not. I think David Woody has 74 caps for Ireland. You know, obviously a great career with Ulster. I prolonged his career by making all of his tackles in the last couple of years of his career. But yeah, he's a good guy. He's obviously went on to Gloucester. He's actually now back home. I see he's out playing lots of golf and spending a lot of time with his family. So I'll try and catch up with him. But I think in terms of talent, he was just extraordinary. Like, he really was. He couldn't tackle a fish supper, but when it came to his skill set, when it came to his kicking ability, you know, 2006 hitting that drop goal against the Ospreys away in Wales, you know, he had all the attributes to definitely have his name mentioned in this conversation today.
And thanks very much for making that pitch for us. I think it's clear what Neil has to do. Neil, you've got to put Willie John McBride as the top rugby guy. How close is he to making?
He's unquestionably the top rugby player ever to come out of County Antrim. You know, he is. Not even whenever you talk about sports people from Antrim, when you talk about the most famous and well-respected and renowned rugby player that Ireland have ever produced, Willie John McBride will also be in that conversation. So, you know, if there's a rugby player going in here to the Mount Rushmore for County Antrim, Willie John McBride will be that person.
We're getting to that complicated part where we have candidates. Is there a boxer, Ciarán Barr, is there a boxer who stands out? Like, I was doing a bit of research on this, and like Wayne McCullough's achievement in going to Japan and winning a world title against a Japanese boxer almost never happens in boxing history. The 2 bronze medals from Paddy Barnes, like, we haven't spoken about that. Michael Conlon wins a world championship amateur, has still got a while to go in his professional career before you could kind of talk about him in the same terms as Dave Boy McCauley, who wins a world title. I'm leaving people out here, am I? Going back, Rinty Monaghan, you mentioned. Apparently he was the best of them all because he kind of unified things. Like, how do you pick a sport that's so important and integral to the history of the county and the city, essentially? How do you Carl Frampton, that was who I was leaving out.
Yeah.
What a career he had.
Yeah, you probably need Jerry Story to filter all of those names and tell you who is the best. Like, my view would be Wayne McCullough. Now, why Wayne McCullough? Great amateur career, then turned pro and went to Japan. But then he fought a huge amount of fights in America and fought Mexicans and fought Colombians and fought all of the best guys at that weight and went up and down a couple of weights. And that's the weights that you've got all of those top class South American, Cuban boxers. Like, it's just, and he was right up there with all that bunch. Like, and I remember watching some of those fights when I was in my 20s, you know, live from Las Vegas, or a recording of a fight from Las Vegas. And you'd hear interviews about him and what he was doing. And I think he lived in Las Vegas, and he was trained in one of those famous old gyms and all that. So for me, he fought in an era and in a level that was extraordinary, and took the risk of going and living in America, going actually and doing it, where you have to fight the best. There's no doubt about it, you know. Be my guy. Just because I remember him, not that he's absolutely the best, but that in my memory, he's right up.
I think that's a good enough criteria. Actually, I want to bring Stephen Ferris back in. Stephen, if you could, if you're still there, because I completely forgot to ask you about the impact that Joey Dunlop had. I know when we were asking you, actually, he was the first name that you came up with before even one of the rugby guys. So why were you such a big fan of Joey?
I think Joey, like Frampton at the minute, it didn't matter what side of the community you were from, whether you're Catholic or Protestant, or you know, what your beliefs were. Everybody loved Joey Dunlop. You know, that famous red helmet, the TT wins that he's had. Everybody forgets that he's an OBE, MBE. He travelled all around Eastern Europe with his charity work. There's a really good story. Stephen Watson, who's a news reporter, a sports reporter up here in Belfast, he used to travel all around with him. And he said to me, I messaged him earlier on for a bit of information on him. And he said, Stevie, when he went to wherever in the world, whether it was Japan, whether it was Estonia, Latvia, he was an absolute superstar. He would get off the airplane and there was hundreds and thousands of people waiting for him at the airport to get his photograph. He was a complete rock star. And like, you think about that in the 70s and 80s, you know, if his photo would be in the newspaper every single day, if that was the case these days. And not too many people know about that. So he was an absolute rock star. He also helped make the famous Honda CBR. He worked for the Honda team in making that motorbike. And another good story, when he was in, I think it was Latvia, he was delivering aid to an orphanage out there somewhere. And he said he was in his van on his own, and it was that cold that he couldn't light a cigarette because the gas in the cigarette lighter had actually frozen. So, like, you know, that's the kind of lengths that he went to. He also raced with my wife's father, Will McNally, who passed away in 1999 at the Ulster Grand Prix. So again, there's an affiliation relationship there between myself and the Dunlop family. But I think I agree with the lad. He is by far high esteem in the county of Antrim, and it would be really remiss of me not to mention it.
I think he's definitely going to go up. I think there's a consensus emerging about him as well. You mentioned Carl Frampton there. Would he be your choice for a boxer?
Yeah, I think he definitely would. I think the weight divisions that he swapped about in the world title fight at the Titanic, what an iconic place to win your first world title against Martinez. I travelled to New York to watch him fight. I've travelled to Las Vegas. I've travelled all around the world to see young Carl. I'd be friendly with him. I would chat to him an awful lot. But it's boxing ability and the way he seems to bring the boxing community together, whether you're from the Falls Road or from the Shankill Road, it doesn't matter. He's a very level-headed, grounded young guy. And maybe, Ciarán, in a conversation in 5 years' time, if we were talking about the same thing here, his name might be first on the list, but he's still in the middle of his professional career. So maybe he's not just ahead of Joey Dunlop or Willie John McBride at the minute. And somebody else just to throw into the mix is Mark Allen, the snooker player, won the British Masters, I think, in 2018, number 4, number 5 in the world. And again, he's only 34 years of age. So maybe in 15, 20 years' time, that might be somebody else to throw into the conversation.
Yeah, he's. I think it's a good point, actually, about Carl Frampton. It gets us off the hook a little bit. He's still fighting, and so therefore we don't actually have to put him on, even though. So this is it's been a very worthwhile interjection there. Thanks very much for that, for Stephen. No worries, we're getting to squeaky bum time here. The case for all those people. Do we need to make a case for Alex Higgins? Is there any appetite from Alex Higgins on this?
I do. Alex Higgins now, obviously, he won a world title. To be world champion in anything, you have to be an incredibly talented guy. But whenever whenever you look back at Antrim as a whole, and obviously a big part of Antrim's sporting history comes from Belfast, that there just has to be a boxer in there. Now, my own personal preference would be Dave Boy McCauley, because I felt like he, from even researching his fights, he didn't duck anybody. Most fighters are taken through a certain channel to try and get them to a world title eliminator shot somewhere or another. Dave Boy just fought everybody. All comers took them on. He was actually quite tall for the weight that he fought at, and it left him just, he looked kind of bigger than every opponent that he fought. But and he's not far around the coast, and he is an absolute gentleman. He runs a hotel just about 25 miles around the coast from Cushendall, and because maybe a feeling of that little kind of strong local connection that I would feel for that man, I think he would be my boxer. I know Ciarán has said probably Wayne McCulloch for him, and Stephen said Card Frumpen for him, but it would be Dave Boy McCauley for me, to be honest.
Okay, so are you putting Dave Boy McCauley on?
He's in.
AP is in.
Yeah.
Joey Dunlop is in.
Joey's in.
And it comes down to Ciarán, Terence, Mary Peters.
I'll get Neil off the hook. I would put Mary Peters on, right? But look at if you looked at Terence McNaughton's career, right? And I only looked this up the other day because I sort of knew that he played for Antrim for a long time. And one of my friends sent me a copy of a programme from the reopening of the O'Donovan Rossett pitch in Shaw's Road. They did the changing rooms up or something, I don't know, in the 80s at some point. And they were playing a football match and a hurling match to open it up. And I think the hurling match was against Tipperary maybe, or Kilkenny, I don't know, anyway. And in the subs is Terence McNaughton, and I think he was 16 or 17. And he was a sub on the Antrim senior hurling team. So he played for, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 years for Antrim. And he was, like, over all the records, one of the best hurlers that Antrim ever produced. There's no doubt about that. But what's significant about it, I think, is the fact that he played for so long, lots of injuries, and I was there a few times when he got hurt quite badly, so he came back from pretty serious injuries. And then to take the county team, which we all know, anybody that's involved in a county team, is a full-time job. It's 30, 40 hours a week on top of your own job. So to do that a number of times as well as a volunteer, as well as taking Cushendall, senior team, underage teams, etc. So if there was a GAA person from Antrim, you'd be hard pushed not to pick Terence McNaughton.
Ciarán, I was told to raise Kevin Armstrong as somebody, and Shawnee Burns going back even before that, I think.
Yeah. Look, Kevin Armstrong was the Terence McNaughton of his day, but in both football and hurling. So Kevin, and if there was YouTube around and we had all the videos and all that crack as we do today, like Kevin Armstrong would be right up there. But I just don't know. Shawnee Burns is the same thing. I didn't see them play. There's no record. But everybody you talk to from that era would say, absolutely, Kevin Armstrong was a superstar, the guy to be stopped if you played Antrim, number one guy to stop, But there's other guys, Jim Core, who played in goals for Antrim, was one of the best goalkeepers of his era as well, and so on and so on, But I think, Sambo played for a very long time at the highest level. Antrim were in Division 1. We were playing at the top table. And he was around for all of that period. There was a few other guys there with him as well, Humpy McKillen and a few others. But, Terence was there from being 16-year-old to being into his 30s, and then take the managerial role after. That's a serious achievement.
Yeah, I think what Ciarán says can't really be underestimated. The effect that Terence McNaughton has had on not only my club but Antrim as a county. He's still so heavily invested. He's our current coach of the senior team. He has had 2 stints as Antrim senior hurling manager because we were finding it hard to recruit people into that position. And for those who know him, he's a real character. He can come off some super one-liners, shall we say, but he's got tremendous enthusiasm for the game. He's utterly passionate about it. It is his sole reason for being. You know, there's no two ways about that. And like, he would have had the ability to carry, you know, a younger generation through nearly on the back of what, you know, Ciarán and Terence and, you know, Algan, you know, as well as Brian Donnelly, Desi Donnelly, those guys achieved. That was always spoken about, and I suppose Terence really embodied the way that team played on the field, a group of fiercely determined, very physically powerful men. And, you know, I think we as a generation, my age group, we grew up, you know, idolising these people, and Terence really embodies everything that they've kind of they've done and what they believed in for Antrim GA.
So we're a little bit stuck because you've got 5. There's room for 4. So we have definitely AP and Joey Dunlop.
Yeah.
And then it gets a little bit trickier after that. You've got Mary Peters, Terence McNaughton. And is that where you're going here? Are you putting the rugby player up or not? Did I skip? I have a feeling I skipped one. Oh, one of the boxers.
I think if I give you my 4, I think the final shout goes to Ciarán, so I can leave him with the hardest task of all, can't I? So I'm going to take my opportunity to do that. So my 4 would be number 1 is AP McCoy, number 2 is Joey Dunlop, and then number 3 I'm going to go for Dave Boy McCauley, followed by number 4, and it's going to be Terence McNaughton. But I know it's very harsh leaving Mary Peters and Willie John McBride out, but I just think there needs to be a GA representative in there, and I'm going for Terence McNaughton in the 4th slot.
So, Ciarán, you've made the case for Mary Peters.
Yeah, look, I think, unfortunately for me, boxing would lose out. I think it could have its own Mount Rushmore and its connection with Belfast. I don't think you can leave Mary Peters out. No, it is an iconic achievement, and given the time that it happened in the middle of the Troubles, and a very elegant lady, very well educated, very well spoken, great ambassador for Northern Ireland, and was an Olympic champion, which we talk about Olympic champions today. You know, you can list them all. There's like, it's just something that you say, whether it's in boxing or athletics or in swimming. You know, at the same Olympics, Mark Spitz. And so, you know, it's extraordinary, and was an extraordinary achievement. And she's a female. So females in sport today, and, you know, I'm involved in the GPA, and we've got the WGPA, and we're trying to support them as much as possible. There is, you know, it's difficult. It's not easy. There's a load of barriers in your way to become a champion of anything. And if you're a female, it's even harder. Mary Peters' achievement is extraordinary. Without trying to be condescending in any way, she overcame huge obstacles to get where she got to. She just had to.
Yeah, it's track and field, so it's actually legitimately against the entire world as well. So it's AP, Joey Dunlop, Mary Peters, and Terence McNaughton. It's a pretty impressive mountain, and you can always tell how strong the mountain is by the subs bench, and the subs bench is pretty spectacular. So I hope you're all going to be able to go home to your respective houses and communities and say, yes, it's fine, we did okay. The final question is always, where does this go? Is this on the Black Mountain? Is this so you can see it in the city? And where is it going?
It'll have to be one of the Glens, I think. You know, they've got Game of Thrones anyway, so let's give them Mount Rushmore as well. You know.
Yeah, this would have to go on the cliffs around Tor Head, so it would, I think.
There you go.
Very nice.
Looking out to Scotland.
Antrim Mount Rushmore is in the books. It's been a brilliant conversation and a very, very rich history that the county of Antrim has. My thanks to Ciarán Barr and to Neil McManus. That was great, lads. Thanks a million.
And that was Antrim's Mount Rushmore there with Ciarán Barr and Neil McManus doing the needful with a final pitch from Irish rugby legend Stephen Ferris. AP McCoy, Joey Dunlop, Terence McNaughton, Mary Peters, and it's going to go somewhere in the Glens, although I do think Black Mountain would have been the best place for it. We're going to bring you along for Mount Rushmore on tomorrow's OTB AM, and then next week we're carving our final county across the country. It's going to be Dublin's turn. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. You can listen back to every episode of our Mount Rushmore on the OTB Sports app. Get it in the App Store now. Just search OTB Sports. And that's also where you'll find our next piece, the OTB Culture Hall of Fame. We've had a star-studded guest list so far on the OTB Culture Hall of Fame, and no change today. Actor Anson Boon is a rising star. He joined Owen yesterday for the very latest episode of our Culture Hall of Fame. Enjoy.
Okay, so Anson Boon is one of the most exciting actors in the world right now. He has been in 1917, he's been in Crawl, he's been in Blackbird, and a whole host of other things. He is with us now. Anton, you're very welcome. How are you getting on?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
All good. First question to a Spurs fan like you, Jose in or Jose out?
Oh, Jose in. I don't get all these people saying Jose out. He hasn't been given enough time to say Jose out yet. And this guy, I mean, if there's anyone that's going to bring success to Spurs, then it's going to be Jose Mourinho, isn't it? You can't say Jose out without giving him at least the whole season or a big transfer window or something like that.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people are possibly reading into what happened at Manchester United, and when the first cracks started to appear, the downfall just happened, and maybe people are afraid that the same might happen at Spurs.
I don't think it will. I think he seems like a new Jose as well. I do believe Spurs will probably ruin him and he'll go back to moody Jose. But I think at the moment he just seems like he really wants to crack on at Spurs, which I never really saw in him when he was at Man United. And obviously there was a derby delight at the weekend when we smashed the Arsenal. So I think that I'm definitely Jose in at the moment.
Are you a match goer? Are you missing the fact that you can't go to matches?
I'm a season ticket holder.
Ah, right.
Yeah. I go to every match. And I go to away games as well all the time. So I'm really missing it. But at least now with the new lockdown rules and stuff, we can at least go to the pub or sort of congregate in small groups outside to watch it with people. So it makes it a bit more enjoyable to watch it, because it was really depressing, without any football at all and then not being able to watch it with people. At least now I can sort of share it with people a little bit.
It's been an incredible couple of years on a professional level for you, but also as a Spurs fan, being in the Champions League last year. So it's kind of a double whammy for you earlier this year when football gets taken away, but then also when your entire industry gets taken away as an actor. Because from the outside looking in, it seems that you were working incredibly hard. There was always something going on. There was always an amount of really interesting projects, very personal to you, that were going on over the last 12 to 18 months. And then suddenly that plug is taken out. How did you deal with that?
Well, you're right. There was a lot going on all the time, and I felt so busy since like October 2018, maybe, when I started filming Blackbird. It's just been kind of non-stop, which is really great. And if you said that to 15-year-old Anson, it was going to be like that, then it would have been amazing, and I would have been really excited. And I've had the best time, but it's almost been a blessing in disguise, this whole putting everything on pause, because it means that I've sort of got to come home and have some downtime with my family and just do normal things that I did before I was really busy, that I've sort of really missed. So it's not been too bad. It's kind of been a welcome break, to be honest. And I feel kind of guilty saying that, because I know it's been like the worst time ever for so many people. It's been a bit of it hasn't been a bit of a disaster. It's been a massive disaster for so many people, the virus. But I've actually, it's been kind of really refreshing and a nice cool down period for me. And now I'm excited to go back to work again, which is nice. I sort of hit the reset button in a way.
It definitely feels like that, doesn't it? Everybody's got a renewed enthusiasm for things that they haven't been able to do over the last 4 months.
Yeah, I've learned so many new hobbies from this. It's been really good. And that's good. People always say as an actor, I remember when I was filming Blackbird, I got so much advice from obviously like the older actors that were in it and stuff. But I remember Susan Sarandon saying to me, you have to do other things. Like you have to do everything but acting in your spare time, because that just informs what you then do when you're at work. So I've had like probably a really good working on my craft period during this as well, without realising.
How do you mean? What sort of things have you been picking up?
I've been doing everything. I'm going to start golf lessons next week.
All right.
Play golf, and I'm just like, I can imagine I'm going to be absolutely terrible at it, but I'm going to try anyway. I've been fishing. I've been keeping really fit. I've been watching loads of documentaries. Like I've just been doing so much stuff. It's really good.
On my first golf lesson, the club slipped out of my hand and I almost killed 2 people with a 7-iron. So don't do that.
With someone.
There's so many things we should touch on from your career in recent times, but the best place to start is with Blackbird, since you've mentioned Susan. Because I was going looking for your social media account, and there is no real evidence of you on Instagram except for a photo you took of her, and her caption is "photograph by Anson Boon." So that's I guess one little footprint of you on social media. Like if you look through the cast of that film. It must have been incredible for people who aren't aware. You've got Rainn Wilson in there as well. You've got Kate Winslet in that cast, and of course Susan, as well as a host of other stars. Like, what an experience that must have been from your professional point of view.
It was insane. I remember I was on holiday with my family. We were on like a summer holiday or whatever when I found out that I got the role. And I knew, as soon as the phone rang, I just knew that they were going to tell me I'd got Blackbird. Because I felt like it went really well when I met the director. But I didn't know who was going to be in it. I knew that it was a really small ensemble cast from reading the script. And I thought, oh, they'll probably, you know, pull out all the stops, try and do something special. And then when I found out the cast, I just like dropped my phone. It was unreal. I couldn't believe that the director, Roger, actually wanted me to be a part of these group of people. And then I remember we did a week of rehearsals before we started filming in October in central London. And I made sure I got there first because I wanted to like watch all of these people walk in. And I remember stood by the toilet, so like out of sight, watching people come in. And Susan came in first, and she had a tiny little dog with her. And her dog had just come from New York with her. And she had like, you know, like her assistant and just everyone coming with her. And she looked like a movie star, but she became sort of like grandma or like just, you know, like an older friend or whatever. And it was just the most surreal experience. And then I was sat, you know, an hour later, sat around the table with Kate Winslet, Mia Wasikowska, Susan Sarandon, Sam Neill, Rainn Wilson, all these people. And I just remember thinking, what has my life become? Because that is so not me. Do you know what I mean? I've never been, I could never have imagined that I would be in a situation like that. And I've been lucky enough for, you know, that to sort of progress as the years have gone on. And yeah, it was just, Blackbird was an incredible experience. And we all got so close. And I'm still really close with Susan now.
You all got tattoos afterwards.
That's right.
That's incredible. So so you've got the same tattoo as Kate Winslet and Susan and Rainn.
All 8 actors and the director.
That's incredible. So when did you decide to do that, first of all? Because that's the sort of thing you would decide to do after a very, very close experience with other humans, I'd imagine.
I think we were in the makeup chair one morning and Bex, one of the actors in the film, was like, hey, we should get tattoos. And Kate Winslet was like, yeah, let's get some bloody tattoos. And then she organised it. And Susan was staying in a little cottage while we were filming. And Kate organised for these tattoo artists to come round on we just wrapped, it was the last day. And then we were all emotional and we all drove back to Susan's cottage and all got these tattoos. We were like, oh, we'll remember you forever. Because it really was like the ultimate bonding experience. I've never felt like family with people, not even with my close friends as much as I did with those people, other than with my real family, obviously.
Why do you think that was?
I suppose the script was really powerful and really intimate. And it was like, it's not the most interesting script, it's a real slow burner. But obviously the plot of the film is that Susan's character is going to perform euthanasia at the end of the film. And it's just set over 2 days with 8 people in this house. And our rehearsals were like that. It was 8 people and the director in this room, sat around a table, just talking, you know. And the director, I suppose Roger, without telling us, made us tell each other everything that we've ever done before in life, like really deep secrets and stuff, without knowing that we were doing it. And we just poured our hearts out to each other, I suppose, in this rehearsal week, and it made us so close. And then it felt like we really knew each other, even though we'd only known each other for a week. And we've shot the film in script order. So, like, you know, we did it every day was like what was in the script. So it was kind of like we were actually going through the emotions that the characters were going through in the film. So on the last day, when Susan's character performed euthanasia, we were actually all saying goodbye to each other. It was, I don't know, It was just really bizarre. And we all lived right near each other while we were filming. And we were all quite far away from home. So it was just sort of, we just all really bonded. And also I think the casting was so good. Like Sam Neill and Susan, they're both grandparents. So there was that sort of natural dynamic there anyway. Kate Winslet's a mum of someone my age. And she plays my mum. Rainn Wilson has a son my age. So it was just cast perfectly, I think. And everyone just fit into their position really well.
That is remarkable. Some very simple things done there. Like the psychology of getting you all to spill your heart out at the start. But filming in sequence, it's something that's just not done very often.
No, it's not. And it certainly wasn't done on the Winter Lake, which is just obviously premiered in Ireland. That was like a completely different experience because there was obviously a lot less money on that shoot. It was a low budget film, so we didn't have the resources to shoot. You know, it'd be ideal to do every film shot in sequence, and we pretty much did that in 1917. But to do that on Blackbird was just a real blessing, because you really are going through the natural journey that the characters are going through as actors, because you all have to say goodbye to each other at the end, like they do in the film.
There must have been quite a come down after that.
Oh, massive come down, yeah. And we still we have a WhatsApp group chat and we talk in it like every week. We're still so active. And we had a little reunion to watch the film, some of us, about a year afterwards. And it was really great to get together. But yeah, for sure, there was a come down. Everyone shed a few tears, definitely.
But that's what you want, isn't it, as an artist, to be so connected to a character that you portray? I mean, looking on the outside, from the outside in, at a character that you feel distant from, probably doesn't feel great. I'm not sure if you've had those experiences, but clearly Blackbird has been an unbelievable experience.
Yeah, it really was. It was a real turning point in my life as well, I think, my career. I really felt like I grew up on that shoot.
How do you deal with that emotion then when you walk off set? When you have this amount of love for a cast, for a project, and how do you turn that into a positive and channel that into good energy for your next project?
Well, with Blackbird, I suppose, because I was surrounded by such a lot of successful people, it really just motivated me to want to do what they've done and be like them. But then with something like The Winter Lake, it was more difficult because the themes were so dark and it was a very lonely film. There was only 4 of us, so the cast is half from Blackbird, and there was, unlike in Blackbird where we had to be really close, there was these real barriers in relationships in The Winter Lake, so that was a lot more tricky to walk away from. But I was on both films, I was lucky enough to have an accent, and I find that really helpful, because at the end of the day, it's just like taking off your costume when you get rid of your accent. I just start speaking like me again, and it's kind of easy to switch off from all the dramas that you've had throughout that day, and then you take your costume off, have a shower and a cup of tea, and it's like, or a pint, and it's like everything goes back to normal.
It's a really good point, because so many actors are method actors. It's such an easy phrase to throw out at the moment. It seems everybody's a method actor, but you kind of like the separation.
Yeah, the separation is good. I think the separation is key. I've had one experience before where I started to allow what was going on in the story come into my personal life, and I was thinking that I was having issues with my mum and dad in real life, and then my mum was like, "What? You're getting too into it. You need to find something to switch off at the end of the day." And so it's really, I think separation is really key.
What did you do to switch off at the end of the day to solve that particular issue?
Well, I was working in London, and I used to either get the tube and bus home. But instead, what I did was just get the tube and then walk an hour home, and walk.
Okay.
You feel much better.
That makes sense. One quick one on The Winter Lake. It was filmed in Sligo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your Sligo experience like?
Yeah, it was really amazing. It's like nowhere I've ever been before. The landscape and just the scenery is incredible. It was really amazing, and it really helped with the film because it was so sort of wild, and I like to call it harsh. I felt it was quite harsh the way that the scenery is around there. It's quite cutthroat. And that's the sort of the vibe of the film. And but yeah, it was great, and the community really welcomed us in, and everyone wanted to help, and we had loads of locals come and help us with locations and stuff like that. And the pubs were amazing as well. I loved it.
For sure. One thing I wanted to ask you about was 1917, but kind of in the context of the subject matter of 1917. Is World War I, is history something you're interested in, and is that a motivating factor when you get involved in projects that are loosely based on real events of the past?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if it's something I find interesting. Well, with 1917, my great granddad has survived World War I. He was a cyclist messenger in World War One, and I've grown up hearing so many stories from my granddad that his dad had told him, and we have his war medals and stuff at home. So, and the age I was in real life at the time, so it would have been 19, was how old my great granddad was in 1917. So it just really interested me, and I really wanted to be honest, it felt a bit like a gift to my granddad, and I remember taking him to see it, and he was really emotional because it was nice for him he's so proud of his dad. He's always spoken so highly of his dad, and I felt like I was giving something back to my granddad by sort of re-bringing his dad to life in a way, and showing him what his dad would have seen at war. Because I felt like if there's one thing 1917 did really well, it was giving a real experience of what it would have been like to be in World War One. The amount of months that the production design team worked in advance of the shoot just to get everything perfect, just like the soil and everything that you can see in that film, they did so much research into making sure it was really accurate. So yeah, with 1917, I just remember being really interested in it and wanting to dive into that story straight away.
did you know at the time how unbelievably well received it will be, how much of a worldwide hit it will become? Like, I'm sure when you're spending that much time on a production set, you've got a pretty good idea this thing is destined to be pretty successful.
Yeah, I don't know. I hate ever trying to anticipate how people might receive what I'm doing.
Sure.
But I remember thinking it was so unique, which is difficult for me to say. I haven't, you know, a lot of people have done a lot more jobs than me. I haven't worked that much, to be honest. Like, I might have done 5 big jobs that I've been heavily involved in. But I remember with 1917, obviously, because of the whole one take thing and the incredible technical aspect of it, and just how well written and constructed it was, and the story felt so wholesome. And Sam and Christy, the director, I just thought they had this incredible vision for 1917. And Sam's always has such a watchful eye over his story. Everything we did throughout the shoot, he was making, in the back of Sam's mind was, how does this inform the audience? And I just remember thinking, he knows exactly what he's doing. I completely trusted him. Obviously, he's got an incredible track record, but I just remember him as a director. I just put all of my trust in him, and I knew that he knew exactly what he needed the audience to feel at what moment. And so I had a kind of a good idea that people would be quite blown away by it, especially because of the sort of technical wonder of it. I remember watching, I was on set, I wasn't working, but I was on set one day, and Roger Deakins was sort of filming going up over the trench to look at this like great expanse of muddy land where all the soldiers would have been. And it brought a tear to my eye, the cinematography of it. It was so incredible, and I thought this will really move people.
It must be hard to not get the bug for being involved in the creative aspect of film when you are working up close with somebody like Sam, who is obviously such a genius. And what has definitely struck me over the last few years is how well educated the audience has become in spotting that genius. Like the one-shot thing, as you mentioned, is an easy vehicle for us to get taken into the technical aspects. So this is the thing that grabs the attention. But while you have our attention, everything Sam then does is uber in front of our face. And it definitely feels that people are going to be more critical of the artistic element of film, but it also leads to huge positives as well, that there will be a greater appreciation for how bloody good some of these things can be. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think people are so switched on these days, and it's like continuity as well. Everyone notices continuity errors now, whereas if you watch a film made 30 years ago, you notice so many things. I was watching an episode of Friends the other night, and it was like I could literally see the boom operator in the background. And man, you'd never get away with that now, because people are so switched on and critical, and you have to make sure that you're absolutely sound now, I think, with stuff like that. But yeah, someone like Sam, he really is a genius. That's the only word I could use to describe him. He's so switched on with what he wants his audience to feel and how he wants his audience to receive what he's doing. It's true. And like that attention to detail has got better over time as well. Like I'm not sure if you've seen The King of Comedy, the Scorsese film, but in the middle of it, you can actually see the cameraman in a reflection in a window. And it's like, this is Scorsese. This is one of the best directors of all time. And still there are continuity errors or little things that you can pick up on. The reason why I asked you, actually, one of the reasons why I asked you about 1917 and your own kind of personal connection with it is because I also wanted to ask you about Master Harold and the Boys, which you were in the National Theatre, was it, in the UK, and your appreciation of that story. Because, I mean, if when theatres ever come back, I suspect that something like Master Harold and the Boys would get a huge reaction after everything that's happened over the last few months with the Black Lives Matter story and how this focuses on apartheid. Because that's something that you were deeply interested in before doing this piece, in the history of South Africa, in the racial divides and that element of things. Is that another element of your historical interests? Absolutely. And like I said, it's like if I get a story through like that, and if it's something that really ticks me over, then it's absolutely something I want to get involved in. And we'd learned all about apartheid at school. And I'd been quite, sort of growing up, I was really interested in geography and stuff. And Africa as a continent always really interested me. And when I got this script through with sort of like 2 African characters and then this little European boy who was so just disgusting to them and stuff, I just, it was fascinating to me. Because there's like, Master Harold was just the most incredibly written script ever. Athol Fugard. In fact, I still haven't had time to read any more of his plays, but I need to read more of his plays. But yeah, I just absolutely wanted to get into it straight away. And I think, you know, like my sort of little part to
the service of abolishing racism is like getting involved in stories like that and just letting people see stories like that and making sure that people don't make the same mistakes that we made in the past, I guess.
How important is it for UK society as a whole that, I mean, theatre comes back, that industry is thriving and booming again? Like I saw there was a big government injection a couple of weeks ago, last week, wasn't it, to try and get the industry back on its feet, because like we're speaking about film perhaps struggling over the last few months. Film probably has avenues out of this in a way that theatre doesn't.
Well, I think it's incredibly important. It means so much to so many people, and it's such a big means of educating people and entertaining people. And I don't know about you, but throughout lockdown, when, you know, football was taken away, new TV was taken away, you know, scripts coming through was taken away, everything was sort of halted, and I realised more than ever the value of entertainment and the value of culture, I suppose. So I think it's incredibly important that it gets back on its feet as soon as possible. I've got all my fingers crossed for it, but it's such a time of unknown at the moment, we just don't know. But yeah, like you said, fingers crossed for film. At least there's all regulations being put in place now that has a route out of all of this mess. Yeah.
You are listening to Anson Boon on the OTB Culture Hall of Fame. What we do, Anson, is we get somebody to come and induct something into our OTB Hall of Fame. What it's tended to be, what it's become really, is what people can go back to. If you had to go and turn on something right now, a film that you'd watch, a TV show you'd watch, or a book that you would read, what would you go back to? So today you're going for the Three Flavours Cornetto trilogy, which, as far as I recall, is Shaun of the Dead, It's Hot Fuzz, and The World's End was the third one, wasn't it?
Right, yeah.
Why did you pick this?
So if I want to go back and watch something, I suppose like a lot of people, over and over again, that makes me feel good. It's easy watching, and I find it really easy watching. I find the characters in it really relatable to my friendship group. I just think that there's just there's all these different people in this group of lads there's just like a really funny dynamic, and they've all got completely different personalities, but they work so well together. That's in The World's End, I suppose. And then in Hot Fuzz, the relationship of Nick Frost and Simon Pegg again. And the towns that they're setting just remind me of like where I grew up, and just I suppose they're weird films to relate to because there's not really themes to relate to, but I find them easy watching. It's my sort of comedy as well. And I would absolutely love to work with Edgar Wright. Every time I watch those films, I'm just like, I reckon he's so much fun to work with. Yeah, I suppose they make me laugh a lot, so that's why I like watching them so much.
Yeah, it's I don't know. We've spoken a lot about nostalgia on the show recently, and I'm looking back at just through the images of these films at the moment, and it's like, did we appreciate this era of British comedy enough? I know obviously there's still plenty to happen, but I mean the Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead era, we knew how good they were at the time, but God, it's hard to see them being surpassed anytime soon at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they'll never die. Maybe at the time we skipped over it a bit much, but like all my mates would just watch them films all the time. I'm pretty sure one of my mates can literally read every line of Shaun of the Dead. Like he knows it inside out. But yeah, and I think it is nostalgia as well. I watched Shaun of the Dead. I don't know, when was that actually made? Is that late 90s, early noughties?
Oh, early noughties would be my initial take on that.
Well, it feels like, when I watch that film, a different world to the one we live in today, like technology and stuff. And I look at that, you know, and the cars all look different. And I look at that London, I think it's based in northwest London. And I look at the London of the early noughties, and it really makes my heart warm. Like it feels like a sense of nostalgia. I really like that.
That's very interesting. How has it changed, or what is the big difference between that London and today's London?
I feel like today's London is just so much faster, whereas that London feels more like, I don't know. I don't actually know where in London it's based, but it feels quite residential where he is. Whereas now I don't see any residential parts of London anymore. It's just all this big, booming, quick-moving, fast-paced, unforgiving city. That's how I feel about London now. I still absolutely love London. It's my favourite place in the world. But that just feels like a different London. I don't think one's better than the other, but it's just nice to see the old one before iPhones became about, you know, massive screens in Piccadilly Circus and stuff like that, I suppose.
Yeah, it does seem different. If I had to push you on one of the three as the standout of the trilogy, which one would you pick?
Oh.
Like picking between a favourite child, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's definitely between World's End or Shaun of the Dead. I like Hot Fuzz.
Okay.
I think the other two are better. I think For me, what I love most about Shaun of the Dead is the setting of it, where it is in London. And what I love most about The World's End is the dynamic of that friendship group, because it really reminds me of my mates. So I'm probably going to go with World's End. Just the idea of like a pub crawl and stuff like that. I think it's a genius idea for a film. I think it's so funny. So I'm going to go World's End. And I honestly, like, that's got so many of my favourite actors in, like Paddy Considine, Martin Freeman. I just think they're so good in it. Eddie Marsan, yeah.
Yeah, they're all absolutely fantastic. It's a good shout, Anson. I'm not going to lie. It's a great shout for an induction into the OTB Hall of Fame. Just a couple of details to mention before we wrap up. People have heard us talk about Blackbird, but just to stress, it's premiered at the London Film Festival and is going to be released in the US this September. Was this a situation where COVID put a halt on the release, or what was the situation with the staggered sort of publicity around it?
Yeah, I suppose it was to do with coronavirus.
Right.
I don't get involved in all of the logistics and all stuff like that. But I'm just glad it's finally going to see it in September. I'm really excited for people to see it.
One thing I meant to ask you is, what is the biggest thing that you learned from conversations with your fellow cast members in that movie? I'm sure there was tons you learned actually getting in there and doing the work, but in the conversations that you had.
I suppose sort of what I touched on earlier, which is to do so much other stuff other than acting, because it really does. The more rich your life is with things that you involve yourself in and hobbies you have, the more it informs what you do on screen, your craft. And I noticed that all these other actors do so many things. They all travel the world and do this and bungee jump and hike and do all these kind of crazy things, and it makes them real happy actors. Because sometimes if you involve yourself, I remember I used to involve myself in acting too much, and it became unhealthy. It becomes like obsessive, because my job is just full of so much unknown. You never know what's coming next. And so if you've got so many other things that you enjoy, that you can fill your time with, then time goes by and there's less unknown, and you enjoy your job a whole lot more, I find. And that's something that I really noticed from the other actors. It was like, acting, they absolutely love it and it's their world, but it's also their job, and they've got other stuff that makes up their world other than acting. So that's something that I've learned from them. It's so important for me, that.
It does seem, though, that the way you've approached your career so far is a sustainable thing, that the projects you've got involved in are, as you've discussed, very historically interesting to you. Your fellow cast members are absolutely amazing. You plug yourself into this hugely emotional way of being. That to me seems like somebody who's really enjoying his craft and doesn't see it as a job.
Yeah, maybe. I definitely don't see it as a job. I definitely take it for granted sometimes as well, because I've always growing up, I always wanted to be an actor. And if someone asked me what I wanted to be, it would be that I wanted to be an actor. But it never really seemed like is viable the right word? I don't know. What does viable mean? Is that the right word? Like a viable...
yeah, it's not your creed.
Yeah. It just didn't seem like something that I could ever really do. Like my family are not involved in it. I didn't grow up in London. I just grew up in the middle of nowhere in England. So it's just like nothing to us. And now it's happened, I guess I really am just doing what I love every day, and it doesn't feel like work at all. But then sort of as I became more busy and got more involved in it, it starts to feel more like a job. So now it's important for me that I enjoy doing loads of other stuff. But I'm glad you think it seems like I've done interesting choices and stuff, and that it seems sustainable. I can tell you that probably, maybe subconsciously it was on purpose. I suppose I have had scenarios where I've had to pick between. I've been quite lucky where I've picked between, like different offers of scripts, and so I guess I have made a conscious choice of what scripts I'm going to be involved in. But yeah, I think I've been quite lucky in that they've all seemed to be really interesting and really deeply emotional in different ways, and they've really sort of it broadened my horizons, definitely, in the way I look at people. I've loved it.
So what are you interested in doing next? I know that's a terrible, terrible question for anybody to be asked. What are your plans for life and all that sort of thing? But is there a particular subject matter? Is there a particular form of art you want to get involved in over the next little while?
I really enjoy film. If I was going to think about theatre, film or TV, I loved what I did in the theatre. But at the moment, I really enjoy embarking on a journey, but it's got an end. And you sort of whether it's 6 weeks or, I don't know, 3 months or something, you just sort of go through this wholesome journey with a group of people, and there's a definitive start and an end. That's something that I really enjoy. And but I would actually really like to do comedy. I'd love to work with Edgar Wright or Armando Iannucci, someone like that. But or Taika Waititi, I think he's great as well. I haven't done much of that. Everything I've done, like you said, it's been really heavy loaded. And while that's great, I look forward to doing something, because I really love comedy as well. So I look forward to doing something a bit more lighthearted. But for me, it really is mostly about the director, because I just love collaboration. And on the Winter Lake, it was just a dream, because me and Phil, the director, literally just sat down around a table and we were like kids in a candy store, just chucking out all these ideas out about the character and like seeing what works and what doesn't, workshopping through it. And that, I really enjoyed that. So I suppose for me, it's about finding just good directors in the future and working with people with similar creative ideas to me.
But it's an unbelievably exciting time, Anson. I should mention as well that the Winter Lake, of course, premiered at the Galway Film Festival last week, so it's starting to come onto the radar now, and I'm sure we'll be hearing plenty more about that over the next few months. It's been great chatting to you, Anson. Congratulations on everything so far, and best of luck to you getting out of lockdown and getting back on the road again. As an Arsenal fan, though, I'll wish you limited luck as a Tottenham Hotspur supporter. I said I'd drop that in at the very end. Get the interview and then drop that in at the very end. Great chatting to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The OTB Sports app. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7, plus all your favourite podcasts.
Do you not realise how crazy those things were?
The OTB Sports app. Available to download now from your app store.